Welcome to the fifth annual edition of Metaverse Safety Week, an annual awareness campaign created by X Reality Safety Intelligence, XRSI, to promote safe and positive experiences within immersive environments. As the metaverse evolves, the associated risks and hazards continue to grow. The risks range from physical harm to societal issues to cyberbullying, financial fraud, IP violations, human rights violations, and exposure to inappropriate, illegal content, to a set of more implicit risks, such as the ones that are brought about from artificial intelligence. My name is Kavya Perlman, and I'm the founder and CEO of XRSI, the chair and moderator for today's track. I'm thrilled to guide this discussion. So on behalf of XRSI and its entire community, welcome everyone. At the helm of XRSI, headquartered in vibrant San Francisco area and our European headquarters in Torino, Italy, with human intelligence in the loop as our guiding principle, we are unwavering in our pursuit for a future where technology becomes an instrument for positive change while safeguarding essential human rights. I'm proud to introduce XRSI as the organizer of this highly anticipated event at the end of the year, Metaverse Safety Week. Our mission at XRSI is to pioneer the establishment of robust data, privacy, safety, security standards, and certifications for emerging tech industry. As a founder and CEO, I'm deeply committed to ensuring that these transformative technologies serve humanity while upholding highest standards of trust and ethics. With this firm belief, we are working tirelessly to create a future where immersive and emerging tech not only enriches our lives, but respects and safeguards fundamental rights. Today, I'm joined with the co-chairs of this track, Monica Manalova and Emmy Hind, as well as several volunteers and staff that are graciously running the show behind the scenes. Today, as we honor the 76th Human Rights Day, we focus on human rights and innovation, finding the balance in an open metaverse. Our goal is to explore the potential of open systems to democratize technology, thereby enhancing social capabilities and promoting justice. Moreover, the dialogue will extend to the necessities of evolving new rights to address emerging tech challenges, including impacts of AI and data-driven technologies on human rights. As I mentioned before, to coordinate today's session, several members of our programming committees will be assisting me online. So some of the key roles that I want to highlight is, together with me, would be moderating Monica Manalova, I'm myself, Kavya Perlman, and then Emmy Hind will be the moderators today. Our timekeeper is Samriddhi Kaur, who might interrupt you if you go over your time limit. We have unanimous AI representatives, Chris, who will be helping us, and our events director, Hanuji Chaudhary. Thank you, all of you. All of these collective input that we gather today will be used to compile a post-roundtable report with appropriate attributions and will be published after the Metaverse Safety Week concludes and before the year ends. A special thanks to our lead sponsor, Meta, for sponsoring the event for the 4th year in a row and to ensure that this event remains free and accessible for all to participate. Meta builds technologies that help connect people, find communities, grow businesses. Meta is moving beyond 2D, as we all know, beyond 2D screens into immersive experiences into the metaverse, helping create next evolution of societal technologies, giving people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. Meta's focus will be to bring metaverse to life and to help people connect, find communities, grow businesses. And the metaverse will be like a hybrid of today's online social experiences, sometimes expanded into 3D. I'd also like to thank Unanimous AI for enabling us to use these intelligence platforms for our global community lab. The platforms, technologies like Pinkscape or Swarm Sessions. Unanimous AI amplifies the intelligence of network human groups, allowing significant and more accurate forecast, assessment, decision, brainstorm, evaluation, prioritization, and most importantly, insights. And we're delighted to partner with them. I'm also truly grateful to our team of advisors, volunteers, and the chairs for curating such an impactful agenda throughout the week, and our community partners for their active contributions and observations. Throughout this week, we'll bring together experts, thought leaders, and enthusiasts, including yourself, the entire community, to explore and address these challenges and opportunities presented by the Metaverse. Before I turn this over to our co-chair, Emmy Hine, let me share today's key objectives. Number one, assess the impact of open systems. Number two, explore technology's democratic potential. And finally, number three, formulate evolving human rights to the digital era. Emmy, over to you.
Thanks, Kavya. And welcome, everyone. My name is Emmy Hine, and I'm a research associate at the Digital Ethics Center at Yale, where I research the ethics and governance of emerging technologies, especially XR and AI. Also a PhD candidate in law, science, and technology at the University of Bologna and KU Leuven. So I'm delighted to be here with all of you today and with a few names that I recognize from Stereopsia, which is currently happening in Brussels. So I'll provide a little overview of what to expect today. So during today's community lab, as Kavya said, we'll focus on assessing the impact of open systems, on exploring technology's democratic potential, and assessing the evolution of human rights in the digital era. Our session today is structured for engagement and insight. So it'll be 3.5 hours. We'll have 2 breaks, one 10-minute break, one 20-minute break. So plenty of recovery time. We'll cover 3 objectives during this community lab, each via a different deliberation method. So we'll start off with a keynote, and then we'll have a swarm session for objective 1, a community session for objective 2, and then we'll end the lab with an engaging Thinkscape session for objective 3. And each of these sessions will have a framing talk by one of our expert speakers. Our Thinkscape session will be formatted as 2 thematic discussions on separate subtopics, and each will be followed by an intelligence gathering Q&A session where contributors and observers can collectively shape our conclusions. So I'll start off with a few ground rules. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. Please use the virtual hand raising feature if you'd like to contribute. We'd appreciate if you could keep your comments concise and within the allotted time. Of course, please maintain respect and professionalism in our discussions. And at any given time, feel free to use the chat feature for related resources or side comments. Especially when you're delivering your remarks, you're encouraged to be on video. And as an observer, you can use the raise hand feature to participate in the discussion. And once you do so, you will be permitted to speak. And during our discussions, of course, if you want to have your video on, you're also, regardless of whether you're speaking, you're also welcome to. As an observer, you can use the Q&A section to share questions, concerns, and comments at any time, and we will do our best to get to them or respond later via email. In terms of technological requirements, we're using 2 very novel technologies today to guide our discussion. So in order to participate fully in the lab activities, you need to be using a laptop or a PC, as Thinkscape is not compatible yet with mobile or tablets. And finally, many, many thanks to the individuals and the representing organizations who are here today to actively contribute and observe. Thank you to our lead sponsor, Meta, and our 2024 headliners, XRSI, Meta XRSI, the Child Safety Initiative, and Unanimous AI. Also, thank you to all the behind-the-scenes folks who are making this happen. A full list of community partners and contributors is available on the Metaverse Safety Week website, which we'll put in the chat. So let's work together to ensure that the Metaverse remains a platform for freedom, equality, and respect for human rights. I'll throw it to Monica to introduce our keynote speaker. Let's begin.
Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Kavya. I'm extremely proud to be here for the 2nd year in the row, co-chairing the Human Rights Day along with Emmy and with Kavya. My name is Monica Manolova. As you probably know, I'm a PhD in Geographic Information Systems from Sofia University St. Clement Ohridsky. I'm an expert in Geo AI and deep technologies and ethics in the implementation of those technologies. I have developed numerous initiatives in the realm of digital literacy and comprehension, and I'm so proud to be a part of this wonderful initiative that Kavya has founded, because I've fully and truly believe that human rights and everything that we are able to do within the digital spaces, we need to defend those rights every single day, as developers, as in people in the industry as well. So it is my distinct privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker of the day, Maria Isabel Cornejo Plaza. Maria is a professor of law at the Faculty of Law at Universidad Autónoma de Chile. She earned her PhD in law from the University of Chile and completed a doctoral internship at the Center of Practical Ethics at the University of Oxford. Her academic background includes a master's in private law and a degree in legal and social sciences from the University of Chile. Her research and expertise spans multiple cutting-edge fields, including bioethics, neurolaw, neurorights, neuroenhancements, neuroethics, artificial intelligence, big data, and data protection. She is currently involved in academic research on the fifth freedom, examining the legal and ethical issues concerning freedom of research within the European research area at the Jean Monnet Center of Excellent Rights and Science. Università degli Studi di Perugia, Italy. Her international academic experience includes positions as a visiting professor at the Bioethics Research Institute of Monterrey, Mexico, and the Jean Monnet Center of Excellence of Rights and Sciences. She is affiliated with CIDIA.org and the Universidad de Chile, bringing together her expertise in law, ethics, and emerging technologies. Maria, we are very happy to have you and proud to have you here. Please share your remarks with us.
Thank you very much for your presentations. First of all, I'm very happy to be here with you in this important event. I would like to say thank you for the excellent organization of this event and, of course, for the choice of them that bring us together. The commemoration of the 76th anniversary of Declaration of Human Rights, where metaversal security is the heart and the center of technological development to protect human rights in the digital age. My expertise comes from the world of law, so my approach will be to provide you with an analysis of new human rights, of rather reformulations of the human rights we already know, but which are relevant within the digital space. To this end, I will divide my talk into three parts. At first, the importance and genealogy of the historic Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And then in the second part, what are the challenges that neurotechnology and artificial intelligence present for the human rights, and the essential postulates established in the declaration in questions. And finally, how can we respond to this challenge? First one, the importance of genealogy of the history of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Human rights and events more so fundamental rights, which are those rights that every person possesses as a person without any other distinction or category, but that being fundamental means that people can exercise constitutional actions or even supraconstitutional action protected by international human rights law. It has been 76 years since the seeds of the particular declaration and the others that preceded, such as the Charter of Human Rights, to incorporate the discourse of human rights in the every actions related to science and technology, not only for an ethical perspective, but also from a legal one. The challenge to the postulates enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are certainly given by artificial intelligence in different ways, namely so-called large language model, for example, as well as deep learning, robotics, virtual reality, augmented reality, metaverse technology, and the way these technologies impact the brain and the central nervous system called neurotechnologies, both in their therapeutic use in the strict sense and also in their ludic or commercial sense. risks exist and are evidenced precisely by the commercialization non-medical device in the fields of cognitive enhancement. What exists today are proto-metaverse, decentralized or proprietary based on blockchain technology, such as Decentraland or Sandbox, platforms on one virtual world, such as Horizon World by Meta, and games such as Minecraft or Fortnite, which offer virtual and immersive space and experience highly problematic for privacy, integrity, mental integrity, cognitive freedom, and so on. Displays and glasses are used for stereoscopic three-dimension vision. Headphone and immersive audio provide auditory immersion. Motion sensors track head and body movement, and hand controllers enable touch, while haptic device with vibro-tactile cues, such as gloves, waistcoat, or full body suit, augment the sensation and perception of reality. All these components combine to create the illusions that the user is inside, present and interacting in a first-person, real-time virtual environment through an avatar. The challenge of both artificial intelligence and other neurotechnologies could be grouped into: first, liability considerations; two, algorithmic transparency; three, intellectual property of software designers; four, privacy, psychological integrity, and cognitive freedom. That's called neural rights. Five, distributive justice, the principles of fairness in the distribution of the benefits and risks generated by artificial intelligence and neurotechnologies. And personhood of robots. Seven, data protection, especially neurodata and others like mental data. And three, how can we respond to this challenge? By the law of the entropy, we can argue that the universe always evolved to a state of less information or destruction of information. That is, it is easier to destroy than to build. And this allows us to discern the past from the future. Chaos is in general rule of the complexity of systems, and law and ethics do not escape this, which is why the first approach of the ethicists and jurists of nanotechnology was the proposed new human rights convergent with the complexity of this new digital era and wave 3.0 technology, also known as the fourth industrial revolution. In 2017, proposal was processed by formulation more towards the evolution of already knows, not towards the destruction of the HR system. This idea of formulation of the new human rights is novel and worth paying attention to, given that human rights are challenged by the surprising and irreversible advance of artificial intelligence and neurotechnology. The rise as a system is complete with such a construction is not destruction of the system, but a gradual transformation of it. Neurotechnologies described for commercial use must be systematically regulated by legislations that goes beyond data protection, because mental integrity, cognitive freedom, and mental privacy are human rights that require a distinct and complex theoretical and philosophical basis. In an immersive 3D experience, we perceived a first-person experience through perceptual illusions, spatial recollection, verisimilitude, and transformed agency. For this reason, as positive virtual reality is not only a persuasive technology, but also a transformative technology capable of altering people's perception of reality because it works predictably similar to our minds in the real world. From this strict sense, we will have to conclude that virtual reality is not a neurotechnology because it does not use devices specifically designed to read or modify brain activity, but is much more complex than a neurotechnology in a strict sense. For example, virtual reality for moral enhancement has emphasized the need for rational monitoring of its application, as it has the potential to result in moral incorrect behavior and may not guide us consistently in moral dilemmas. The fundamental concept behind immersive virtual reality is its ability to elicit and modify human emotions. It is precisely from the aspect that it derives its greatest risk compared with to the environment, because the brain perceives virtual reality as a genuine experience, potentially leading to the formation of memories that becomes entangled with reality, and because the extensive extraction and storage of information in the use of technology result in the transparency of the user identity and inner self. This information encompassed biometric, emotional, and behavioral data on the central issues arising from the convergence of artificial intelligence and neurotechnology is the privacy of users' neurodata, due to its potential of human rights abuse. Therefore, it is easily understandable that several international organizations were on the relevance of this risk, especially in sectors such as consumer law, especially for hyper-vulnerable consumer, neuromarketing, education, democracy, and citizens' public freedom. Law was provide us with tools to manage the chaos present for the generative entropy of artificial intelligence and neurotechnology. As, for example, the chaos is not fear, but the search for methodology of tools to manage its risk. Disorder serves to introduce a sophisticated dynamics into the systems. In the legal system, it can be given by the tools of protection of the precautionary principle, to specific and reinforce informed consent for each objective for which is possible to use neurodata. Another category that is bursting with force in this framework, and finally, in the fortunate case of Chile, my country, to use the constitutional actions of neural rights, which grant protection to brain activity according to the current text. One consensual neural right is the cognitive freedom, another is the mental privacy, and finally, mental integrity. Since the manipulation of emotions, the confusions between analog reality and virtual reality can cognitively dissociate a person, and this is known in psychiatry as a disorder. The legal nature of neurodata is generally distinguish whether is that data that can be anonymized, but in my opinion, its nature is biometric, and of the type of related to the structure and functioning of the brain, and also to the mental information of the psychological phenotype, even if it's not possible to identify the owner in a linear and direct way. Mass traffic of mental data of individuals, whether identified or identifiable, should be prohibited, even in case where the individual concerned have given their consent. The case should be dealt with according to the general principles of responsibility and precautions, with increased protection for the children and adolescents and others vulnerable groups. Brain reading is possible through an interpretation of neurodata collected by this device, which are stored on servers that have not jurisdictions but in their countries of origins. The European Union's General Data Protection Regulations, although the most efficient example of how to protect our data, is also an imperfect regulation because it has shortcomings in terms of regulatory integrations between members of countries. As well as need for updating in the face of the imminent development of generative artificial intelligence, Metaverse, and other neurotechnology. It is the high relevance for shaping the boundaries of the market for neurotechnologies globally. This is why different multilateral organizations, such as Organization for Economics, Cooperation and Development, United Nations organizations, United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, and Organization of American States are working on soft law document to configure regulations of global and regional impact to safeguard human and fundamental rights in the face of the development of artificial intelligence and neurotechnology. The regulations of neuro rights, it's a proposal of objective law, no soft law, in the face of the challenge that this disruptive use of these new technologies present for the protection of human rights. This proposal was made in a framework of democratic discussion so that it constitutes a regulatory example that has also materialized in a ruling entitled Emotis versus Girardi, which enshrines its spirit and vision. Other countries may provide other responses, but as long as they are democratically generated and involved in concrete actions by citizens, they will be effective as regulation. Therefore, focusing only on European data protection regulation under the plexus of neurotechnology, artificial intelligence, is insufficient. This is why I believe it is right to move toward a correct implementation of neuro rights regulation. In my opinion, protections should focus on three key aspects. First, safeguards structural and functional brain data as particularly sensitive personal information. Two, guarantee the requirement of valid, specific, and reviewable informed consent, including the right to erasure, to right to be forgotten. And three, prohibiting the mass processing of neurodata of identified or identifiable users, even potentially. In this respect, I do not share the opinion of several European criminal lawyers, such as Merkel or Bablitz, to equate the protection of brain data to the prohibition of organ trafficking, because, in my opinion, brain data can be hacked, manipulated blatantly without the need for vascular or endovascular intervention of human brain. For me, the big ticket to protecting this practice is undoubtedly the strength to recent construction of neuro rights. These are human rights caused by neurotechnology and digital environment, especially vulnerable in immersive environment. Thus, 76 years after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have an evolution of human rights, but in the digital environment, cognitive freedom, mental privacy, mental integrity show that the foundations and protection functions of this declaration continue to be fully enforced. Thank you very much for the patience.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was a profound speech, and it really took us through the entire process of the establishment of the Human Rights Declaration and its current structure, its relevance to the current rights that we're dealing with, and to the most current changes concerning neuro rights and neurotechnologies. All right, so we're going to resume with the community lab discussion, which is focused on assessing the impact of open systems. I will be the moderator for the first objective of this discussion for today's community web. I would like to once more repeat the fact that every single contribution which you provide during these discussions will go directly into the Metaverse Safety Week report for Human Rights Day. It is very important for you to remain active, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished colleague and friend, Professor Melodina Stevens. Melodina Stevens is going to provide the 10-minute remarks setting the scene for our first objective of the day, which is to assess the impact of open systems. As you probably know, the theme of this year's Metaverse Safety Week is embracing change and also discussing open systems and their positive and negative impacts towards 2025 and towards the future. So Melodina Stevens is an Innovation and Technology Governance Professor at Mohammed bin Rashid School of Governance in Dubai. Her senior management experience spans countries and across corporate, academic, and government sectors. Her research and consulting expertise is in strategy. Covers areas like agile government, innovation, brand building, crisis management, design thinking. She has worked on numerous projects and is called on as an expert for IEEE, the Council of Europe, World Economic Forum, Agile Nations, World Government Summit, Meta, and many others. She is passionate about ethics and governance in frontier technologies, such as the use of AI. She's a prolific writer, and her most recent books include Anticipatory Governance and AI-Enabled Business, a Smart Decision Toolkit. You can follow her at www.melodina.com and also on LinkedIn. Hi, Melodina. We are very happy and grateful to have you. Please set the scene for our first objective of the day.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. If I could just share my screen. All right, so I guess if we have to start, we assume open source is free, and that's just basically the connotation we have, right? But when we look at the metaverse, we see all these layers, and then the question is, across the layers, what exactly is free, right? So we've got hardware, we've got software, we've got APIs, we've got algorithms. So we need to kind of consider what is the dialogue when we look and we say it's free. For some reason, yep. So we look at trade-offs, right? On one hand, innovation, we say, great, open source, low cost, less effort, less collaboration. But on the other hand, we're thinking of risks. And one of the big ones is security and ethics, right? So I'm just going to touch on that very, very briefly. There's been a lot of articles that have come over the last 2 years. And the question is it really open? And if anyone knows the Signal founder, she also says open systems are actually closed, right? There's always a catch. Maybe it seems like it's open, you get in, and then there's this money you have to pay if you want to access your data, if you want to continue subscribing. So it's really important to understand the terms and conditions if you're building XR. So that's the first thing that I want us to focus on. And here's some kind of, these slides will be distributed, so you could look at that in greater detail with the articles, right? This is an example in terms of XR, what is currently available. So I want to specifically highlight APIs, because if you look at the amount of traffic on internet calls, we're looking about 70 to 80% is APIs. So we're just connecting code from one place to another. And each time we connect code, that is a security risk. We've seen many, many, many examples. Of course, a lot of them are hidden, but if you actually read, you know how much of a danger that is, right? We found on an average, organizations had anything between 12 to 600 APIs. And the problem becomes a lot more, much more larger, simply because now I can use ChatGPT to go and access, let's say, coding databases. I don't even need to know how to do code. I just borrow bits of code from here and there. The challenge with any security threat is the amount of time it takes to find a vulnerability, and that's about 200 days, right? And this is from some of the top cyber experts. So how would you know if something's not working? And meanwhile, just like we've heard with the previous speaker, you're collecting all this data, very sensitive data, and that is a worry. The other challenge is we have data leakage. Now, we traditionally assume data leakage comes because of software vulnerabilities. Surprisingly, some of the recent papers showed comes from hardware. And in one particular study, as an example, and you're seeing how much of data they're collecting, right? We saw in one study it was coming from the gyroscope. So not things that we traditionally imagine. So be prepared when you look at open source systems. Be also aware of how big the industry is for trading data. So this is, if you've heard of any of these companies, and I would just say, I mean, look at them. They are massive. They basically buy, for example, huge servers, and they only hive data and create personal profiles of people. And your data right now is trading in the black market, right? We're looking at the costs. $99 is not much, and you can get like multiple health records currently right now. So the price of your data could be as low as $2, just to give you an idea how these data brokers work. We also want to understand what are some of the dangers of borrowing code when you don't understand things like weightage, what was the purpose in which it was given. So right now, especially with XR, we want to gamify everything. And there are dangers, just like which we heard right now on gamification. And I cannot highlight enough this particular issue of the young boy who fell in love with the chatbot, right? So we are not yet prepared to go and understand the implications on people. And we kind of see more and more XRs being used in early education. I would say be very, very cautious. Unless you have a sociologist, a psychologist, you're sitting and working with experts in early, and you're understanding how this impacts brain, especially because children's brains develop, and the kind of impulses you do with gamification, this could lead to changes that we are not necessarily understanding the consequences. So again, open source, understand what you're getting and the, I guess, provenance of some of the software which you're borrowing and the data that you're borrowing. Very, very important. I want to highlight an issue from data brokerages, and this is trafficking, okay? This is a big problem right now. I'm not talking about elections only, but I'm talking about parents putting children's pictures or people, adults putting, their own pictures. And currently it seems like we want lifelike avatars. So we want to use our images and gamify, but what are some of the dangers that could be there? And this is something we've not explored yet, but we're sort of bridging on the cybercrime area. When we create an XR community or a metaverse community, we need global citizenship values. And this is kind of hard. When everyone's on the platform, who decides these values? I've been looking at research from long back ago, since the first games were created in Silicon Valley. And even in those days with 200 players, they all agreed on one thing: we don't have common values. In today's we definitely don't have that. And then you add the challenge of an AI bot, I think it becomes a little bit more different. So my question to you is, do we have a voice? And for the people who are in these, and what is the human in the loop design features that we're building in? So before you build a system, I think really understand why you want humans to be involved in there. And this example that I've given you is a simple one, but if anyone is familiar with the MCAS failure, which led to 2 Boeing airplanes crashing, it's not that the pilots don't learn on simulations and things like that, but at the end, are these simulations enough for experience? And I think this we've found time and again, human beings and machines work very differently. So kind of understanding that. Last point that I want to leave with you, and when we it's now easier to build these systems because of the access of open source. But what we don't see behind the scenes is the footprint we leave on sustainability. So like they commonly say, we have only one planet. There is no planet B currently right now for that. And with that, thank you, Monica. Thank you, Kavya, for this excellent opportunity.
Thank you, Meudina. As usual, extremely profound and important points that you made. Yes, it was a huge point of discussion several years back, even during the Bletchley Summit, whether we should go directly towards open systems and open technologies because they provide more access and provide quicker solutions to accelerate digital technologies in this brand new era when we are developing AIs, or should we be cautious about the threats that they pose? Which is why we're going to dive into an exercise, which is a community exercise, which is the point of this entire week, actually, getting engaged as a community, finding the answers together, and utilizing our shared intelligence. Thank you once again, Meudina. So the session will now be followed by an intelligence gathering session where all speakers and participants will take part in a collaborative exercise by responding to strategically curated set of questions via the Swarm platform. Swarm is a tool by Anonymous AI. This innovative approach combines real-time human insights with AI algorithms inspired by nature's swarm intelligence to amplify collective decision-making. At any given time, no personal data will be collected beyond the already permitted and aggregated outputs from the exercise of the collective intelligence gathering, which will be recorded and published on our lab report, as noted before. So a bit of orientation before we go into the swarm exercise. I know that some of you were here last year, but still, I'm just going to explain the way in which we're going to approach this. So we're beginning the swarm session now. It is important that you remain active, that you respond to the questions, that you participate. We will combine our inputs with the Swarm AI technology, which will gather insights and unlock the collective intelligence of the group. Our goal is to converge on the best possible answer for each question by combining knowledge, wisdom, insights, and the intuition of the group. When you it's going to be like maybe we can share the screen so we can see the exercise. It is a magnet exercise, basically. So for each of you, a magnet will appear, which you can place close to the puck. And depending on the answer which you want to provide to the question that is presented on the screen, you can move the puck with the magnet, which will help the AI technology identify the most preferred answers by the group, utilizing our collective intelligence. You can pull towards the answers which you believe are the most appropriate to the question, or you can consider 2 or 3 options depending on the ones which you consider most important. The closer your magnet is to the puck, the stronger the pull will be. Keep in mind that you need to pull continuously throughout the question when we are answering the questions. If you're not pulling on the puck with your magnet, you have no impact or influence on the outcome of the exercise. Our goal is to converge on the best possible answer for each question by the group, and we also want to include a couple of minutes for discussion as to what answers were the most preferred ones, apart from the ones which was generally agreed on by the group. I know that some of you were participants in last year's exercises with Swarm, but still, we are going to do 2 quick example questions.
Monica,
So
the link is in the chat.
Yeah, the link for the swarm is in the chat. You should join the swarm exercise now. And yeah, before each question, there will be a 10-second timer so that you can read the question and the various options. I'm going to read the questions along with the screen appearing, and then you can pull on the puck with the magnets so that we can settle on the response to the question. So we can start with the first 2 practice questions so that everyone can touch on the magnets and settle on the solution. Should we do the first 2 exercise questions? All right. So what is the most significant impact of open systems on privacy in immersive in immersive environments is the first question which we're going to do. You should go onto the link in the chat. Please consider the options. The options for the response should
Not seeing the options yet.
yeah, they should display in a second.
So there is a small glitch. So we will start from the first question. So I'm just putting it up for the first practice question. So this is not the practice question. So just bear with me for a
I
second.
know, but maybe we can just start with this one since it is already open
Here's the
and
practice question, if you like. I've got that loaded up, and we'd like to do practice questions to get everyone set.
no, it is fine. We should continue
Okay.
with the direct discussion, and everyone will get a few of the exercise once we have it. Please, let's go ahead with the direct question. So this is the first question of our exercise.
Oh, that's the
That's the
the
practice
practice
question
question.
now. We'll start.
Let's go with the flow then.
Okay, everyone. So let's get a feel for the Swarm AI experience and technology. This is the first practice question. What is the most important invention of the 19th century? You should go onto the link, click with your mouse browser will turn into a magnet. You should pull the puck towards the answer which you consider the most important one, which is either electric bulb, a light bulb, typewriter, the battery, photography, telephone, or the steam engine. These are some difficult questions right here. Please go ahead and pull on the puck. All right, so you can see the group pulling towards option number C. Option C. Yeah, I don't see the responses for the practice question, but I think that there is a bit of a group consensus there. I was going to go for the light bulb, probably, but I think that many of you went for the telephone. I think you get a feeling of how this is going to go. No private information is going to be gathered. No personal preferences are going to be gathered. We're going to rely on group intelligence only. So the preview, which was already displayed for you, our first question of the actual exercise. What is the most significant impact of open systems on privacy in immersive environments? Let's try and go into that. Oh, again, the practice question number 2. Most important invention of the 20th century. Please, let's try and practice a little bit on this one as well, and then we can go into the actual exercise. Okay. Antibiotics. Okay, the swarm size is 30 people, which means that 30 people have pulled on the puck for the question, and the level of conviction to this response is 60% of the group. This is basically what we're going to be gathering as information from all of you now. And yes, antibiotics are quite an important invention for the 20th century. Thank you so much for that. If you have any questions, please put them up in the chat so that we can see them. And I think that we should go into the exercise now. We have prepared several different types of questions for you regarding the first objective of today's day. So the first question which is going to be the actual question of the exercise, is in long form, what is the most significant impact of open systems on privacy in immersive environments, as you already saw several times. The options are going to appear in a second. So we have enhanced control over data, create challenges for standardized privacy environments, support development of privacy-focused tools, encourage community-led privacy initiatives, promote greater transparency, and facilitate data security breaches. Please pull towards the option which you find most preferable. All right, we went into brain freeze for the very first exercise, which means the group wasn't able to decide concretely on the possible solutions. Out of the swarm size of 28 people, I think there was 1% conviction on where to go. I think that the majority of the group was pulling towards data security breaches, which was option B. You can stop pulling now. I think that we should rerun the question and we should try and go for a concrete solution. Yes, let's repeat the question and see if we can arrive at a concrete conclusion, or and we can discuss a little bit the various options. All right, we're at a brain freeze again. This is actually kind of a good thing because I think that many of you are considering this problem quite deeply. Would anyone like to jump in and explain which was the option that they were most interested in providing as an answer and why that is? We would be quite interested to hear your opinions. Please don't worry, all opinions are welcome. I believe that there is no wrong answer. I can see that there are some answers in the chat box. Liam, would you like to jump in the discussion and explain?
Yeah, in my 30 years, part of my job has always been to investigate actors in supply chain scenarios. And one of the things that has changed over my 30 years has been people who have injected themselves into an organization versus long game players inserting themselves anonymously into open source systems.
Sorry, Liam, any way to increase the volume or somehow adjust your mic? Because you're coming in very quiet for most
Is
people.
this a little bit better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. So, do I need to repeat?
Yeah, please repeat so that everyone can hear you.
Yeah, so basically in the last 30 years, part of my job, which has involved investigating breaches from insiders and corporate, has changed to investigating supply chain as it's moved to open source. And one of the things that really has concerned me over that change was people have played the long game, where open source systems, you trust is built upon contribution, and solid contribution for on a project, say on the good side, can be done for 99% of the life cycle of that actor inside an open source repo, say, for example, or open source project. That 1%, that one time that person conducts a slip on behalf of a group wanting to control an open source project is all it takes. So more transparency is needed. In finance, we talk about know your customer, KYC. In reality, open source projects, the vast majority of them, a lot of the people are truly anonymous. So unless you have known people, those trust networks can be built up. Inside a threat inside open source projects is actually one of the biggest issues that we face moving forward.
Thank you very much, Liam. That was quite insightful. I agree with you that it is cybersecurity risk sometimes, but isn't what we do most of the time also based on open source solutions, like when we used Stack Overflow and when we try and investigate GitHub repositories for answers as to how to improve our systems? Isn't that something that we do every single day almost in what we do when we develop something new?
I agree. But unless there's a systematic way that we can vet people and understand what their contributions are, we're also relying upon other people to vet those changes. And it's not always clear, especially in things like cryptographic implementations. It's not always clear as to the long-term goal of what this actor would be inside an open source area. So more transparency would help, would assist in that.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else have any other opinions? And then we'll move to the next question. If there is nobody else, I think that we should move along to the next question. Chris, I'm going to read out the long form now for the second question. What is the most significant positive impact of open systems on freedom of expression in virtual worlds? So, what is the most significant positive, remember, impact of open systems on the freedom of expression in virtual worlds? The options will appear in a second. Basically repeat the same thing that we did earlier. The options are facilitate censorship circumvention, foster collaborative artistic freedom, create new modalities of expression, enable diverse content creation, and lower barriers to entry for marginalized voices. All right. Excellent. So for the second question, we have out of the 27 swarm size, we have conviction rate of 58%. Can we repeat what the preferred response was here, because it changed really quickly for me? Yeah, it was enable diverse content creation. I think that was the response which gathered the most positive outcomes. Would anyone like to comment on why we think that more diverse content creation will be possible? Obviously, when it is open source systems, everyone has access, anyone can develop things. Liam outlined the risks earlier. Anyone wants to share more about collaborative artistic freedom or the positive sides of open systems with regards to the second question?
I just have one comment that it's almost critical that we
Yeah.
have diverse contents. Else, what is often seen that rules are set by the Western Hemisphere or access drives the whole system to be more focused on those type of data sets, et cetera, et cetera. So for virtual worlds to represent us all, to potentially determine what all challenges the whole world faces, as diverse as the world is, we absolutely need this. And that's kind of my takeaway. And it's notable that we came to consensus a little bit rather earlier because our diverse community understands this whole need for it as well. So
Yes, it would be rather sad if every single one of us was living in their own virtual reality, which only included people out of their own country and people out of with their own cultural understanding. Because the beauty of the internet is that we can all meet and exchange and discourse, and yeah. Yes, Manije? Please just share. Unmute yourself first, please.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm on my phone, so it's hard to see these options. So, yeah, this is interesting, really exercise the way it's being conducted. And I think both questions had a lot to do with who is in the room. I think it's influenced by perspectives of the people in this room. So previous question, the brain freeze, I felt like all of those options were very much applicable, and so it was very difficult to choose which one. And then this one, the same way. But then I think I don't know if there was an option about connecting people all over the world. Probably the content creation was sort of alluding to that, but I think the connection part is, I don't know if it was there or not. That I would not have. I've had so many students from Japan, New Zealand, Australia, that had it not been because of this innovation, that I would have never met, and so, but also the people who are here, if their perspective is heavily based in, some area, some experience of human life, then it impacts the choice. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Manija. That's why we are using the community-driven approach, so that it is going to be the swarm deciding the final answer rather than a single person's experience. And it is the majority that is going to provide us the responses. All right, let's go into the third question. The third question is, what is the most significant negative impact of open systems on freedom of expression in virtual worlds? Again, on the more con side of the spectrum. The options are going to display in a second. All right, so lack of oversight encourages harmful speech, creates new avenues for fraud, increases prevalence of CSAM and explicit deepfakes, increases risks of misinformation, and provides another avenue for government censorship and control. Please poll towards the answer that you find most accurate. Keep the magnet close to the puck, that way the pull will increase. All right, out of the swarm size of 25 people, we have a conviction rate of 47%. Going towards the increased prevalence of explicit deepfakes, please, somebody just jump in and elaborate the answer for me. Freedom of expression in virtual worlds, we think that deepfakes will increase if systems are more open. Can somebody please just who was pulling for the answer, give us a response as to why that is. Why do you consider that answer important? Please
Well,
remember that no wrong answers. Just yes, Amy?
Personally, I was pulling for that option because I think that it's something that we're already seeing, especially in non-immersive contexts with open source generative AI tools and things like that. And it's clearly something that is and will be increasing in prevalence in immersive contexts.
All right. Yes, Kavya?
yeah, just to, it also alludes to the nature of virtual world. I often say that, post-reality era. And so losing our sense of reality. And then CSAM content and deepfake is just like a one aspect of it, but just really losing your sense of reality is kind of what sort of it alludes to. And that, to me, using open source, that would be my biggest sort of concern.
Yeah, I understand this. And the number of reports of people falling in love with virtual avatars has somewhat increased, which I'm not sure if it is a commentary on the world we live in or rather on the world we live in rather than on technology. But considering the turbulent times, I would consider those quite significant risks. All right, so I think that so far we have had some very interesting responses. Unless somebody else wants to jump in, I think that we should go on towards question number 4. What is the primary security challenge posed by open systems in immersive technologies? Primary security challenge posed by open systems in immersive technologies. The options will appear in a second. Decentralized responsibility for security, increased risk of malware integration, misuse of open source tools by bad actors, project governance captured by bad actors, vulnerability to cyber attacks, and difficulty in auditing the code. Please try and pull towards the option which you consider the best possible response to this question. The decentralized responsibility for security, swarm size out of 25, conviction rate for 51%. So the conviction rate is not that very high on this response. I would be interested to hear your perspectives as to why decentralized responsibility for security is a primary security challenge posed by open source systems in immersive technologies. Usually decentralized responsibility for security is not that big of a. There are 2 ways to look at it. Some people prefer decentralized responsibility for security, like business continuity options. If a system fails, then the business continuity goes up somewhere. So that is decentralized. If it is a centralized responsibility for security, it's much easier for bad actors to attack the system and bring it down and to produce bigger havoc. So it is usually decentralized responsibility for security that is a better option towards the cybersecurity space. But I would be quite interested to hear what are the risks there that you have identified? What do you consider important here? Because, yeah. Anyone? All opinions welcome, all perspectives are cherished. No wrong answers, really. Yes, we understand the role of bad actors, but bad actors are present right now everywhere as well. Like we can, it would be a mistake to not consider the fact that every single time during Christmas time, the cybersecurity attacks spike across the globe, and it's like a tradition, like a Christmas tradition for hackers as well. All right, let's go on to the next question, which is question number 5, which I hope will provide more food for thought. Which approach best balances human rights promotion with security in open systems? The options will appear in a second. The question is best approach to balance human rights and security in open systems. So we have hybrid open source and proprietary models, global regulatory collaboration, continuous security auditing and patching, transparency requirements for developers, open standards with strong privacy protocols, community-led ethical oversight. Please pull towards the option which you consider the most appropriate. The closer the magnet is to the puck, the stronger the pull, I think. So please. Open standards with strong privacy protocols. The swarm size is maintaining, conviction rate is increasing with this one. Anyone interested to elaborate more on that response and why it seems to fit best for them? All right, so the thing here is we already have global regulatory cooperation. On the final day of the Metaverse Safety Week, there will be a Regulatory and Governance Day when you'll be able to discuss those regulations. Open standards with strong privacy protocols. I think that since we are discussing open systems, this is potentially a decent response to that question. I think that community-led ethical oversight is also quite important. As Liam mentioned, these different open source systems and models are already out there. Many companies are already using some form of open source artificial intelligence to develop systems, to develop solutions, to catch up with the market. So I think that it is extremely important for us as a global digital community to also audit our stuff and to help each other out. And when we see some bad call somewhere, to just flag that and to inform the people that we're working with in this global village. Because all systems are vulnerable, and it's important to keep an eye on potential vulnerabilities that may occur anywhere in the space. Anyone else wants to jump in and discuss? If not, we can go on to the sixth question, which is, I will display in a second. How can the open source community most effectively promote human rights norms in immersive environments? Right? So the options will appear in a second. All right. So how can open source best promote human rights in immersive spaces? The options are create publicly available human rights audits, amplify marginalized community voices, strengthen international cooperation for inclusion, develop open source human rights watch software, encourage universal accessibility, and embed ethical AI development standards. Please pull towards the option that you recognize as most fitting. Create publicly available human rights audits. Okay, so from an increased swarm size of 27 people out of the group, we have a conviction rate of 57%. So who wants to elaborate more about the creation of publicly available human rights audits? Yes, Marisa?
Hi. One of the things about norming, right, or as I understand it, one of the things about norming is that norms are the trends and agreements. And so if there can be internationally if it can be gathered, that what are the agreements, or how are they gathered, right, in each place, and then looking at the commonalities, that's when the norms can begin. So those audits, right, if those audits can be taken in multiple locations so that it's not one location, it's not one culture, right, that if those can be gathered, and then looking at the constellation of what are the commonalities and where are they crossing the line, that is in fact where I believe that is where the norming can begin to happen in a way that is not judgmental about one place or another.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, Kavya.
Yeah, I actually am part of this OHCHR Human Rights and Business Working Group, and they certainly have developed a model to audit. The issue with audits that I feel is attributing that somebody is at fault is very easy, but enforcing it to actually change something about them. And many a times it's because they just have so much of a lobbying power, or they're just too big and powerful to even care about human rights at times. So that is, those our challenges go beyond than just identifying what could work versus what is the reality of it. And I specifically want to point out that group because that group is one of the few instruments that is conducting this kind of intervention specific to open source systems as well, and to virtual worlds.
Thank you, Kavya. So audits have been a long time discussion for the entire AI community, and from the very first audits that just basically include a checklist of checking different elements of a system to just tick off the boxes. I do believe also that human rights are far more important than to just do checklists with them. And as our keynote speaker said earlier, and as Meudina so accurately said, there is a lot more data being gathered constantly by every single system that we're interacting with than we are able to understand, as even as users from the developer space. So I think it's quite important that we also amplify marginalized voices, which is something that XRSA has been doing for quite a while, and strengthen international cooperation for inclusion. Extremely important for us to do if we want to, for our open systems to actually benefit people rather than harm them. All right, let's go into the next question. What is the most critical factor to ensure privacy within open systems? Okay, this is an interesting one. Critical factors to ensure privacy within open source systems. Decentralized data ownership models, regular open security audits, collaboration with privacy advocacy groups, encryption standards integration, transparent data usage policies. Please pull towards the option that you consider most fitting response. All right, quite a strong conviction rate on this one. Transparent data usage policies with a conviction rate of 83%. Is anyone interested to elaborate more on this answer? Yes, Kavya?
Sorry, while others raise hand, I have to say I'm so thrilled to see this answer, especially because XRSI believes and is working towards creating certain standards that will help the industry with more transparency around data and data governance. So really thrilled to see from our human intelligence in the loop that this is particularly with high conviction could potentially be one of those responses, the answer. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And I also consider decentralized data ownership models quite important. Like if you're the owner of your own data within the space, you can decide what to do with it. But then again, you never really are with digital solutions. All right, does anyone else want to jump in on the transparency of data usage policies, or should we move on to the next question? Yeah, let's move on. What role should governments play in regulating open systems to safeguard freedom of expression? It's an interesting one. Encourage open dialogue in development communities. Fund open source projects with ethical safeguards. Continue with the status quo. Set clear regulations around platforms regarding expression. Collaborate on global human rights standards. Please pull towards the response which resonates best with you. Collaborate on global human rights standards. Really strong conviction here, 91% conviction for this response out of the group. So please somebody just jump in and say why you think that government should collaborate more on global human rights standards. Quite important on today's anniversary of the signing of the Human Rights Declaration. Anyone? Anyone interested to share their views? Please don't be shy. There's really no wrong answers here. Even if you're considering another option valuable, we'll be happy to hear it. Yes, Marisa?
Hi, I think that, this is the point that I certainly heard last year from last year's event and at every other event that I go to at the summits. People keep calling for radical collaboration of countries around the world. It's not that is in fact what it's aspirational. At this point, I have some ideas how we're how I would like to help see it happen. But I'm just one person, and it requires so many people from so many places to begin rethinking what does collaboration actually mean. And it really going even into what Adam Kahane would call, stretch collaboration, collaborating with people I might not normally want to talk to or know or see. And, this is, I think, as Vint Cerf said, at the 50th anniversary of the internet the other day, the original goal of the internet was to cross boundaries, right? It was almost Star Trekian of crossing boundaries, going between countries and lands. And so I think that very much this idea of what will collaboration look like and what will global collaboration look like is a question, is an open question that we have in a world that is transforming as we speak, and people are digging into their corners. How do we pull them out of their corners? That's, of course, the question, and that I think all of us hope to contribute to making happen. But I think that it is going to require a different form of collaboration than we're used to seeing.
Thank you, Marisa. Let's hear from Erica really quickly, because I think that we need to close the session.
Thank you. Very kind of you. I'm sending you my regards from Bath in England. It's 6:30 p.m. here. It's a great honor to take a part of your Metaverse Week, and I cannot agree more with Marisa mentioning that the collaboration has to be transformed, has to be very different from what we know now and how we used any tools of collaborations until now. As well, I suppose, because of the academic background, and there are some research-based and evidence-based and empirical evidence as well, and empirical support of my own research, that the dignity has to be sustained, and as well the legal systems and the comparative legal systems are helping us to understand how difficult it is to try to promote the human rights within the governmental body. The governments are lacking understanding, and as well there is the political power, which is a part of course, the democracy, but we have to understand the democratic process and how the legislation is created. And these are in-voted, most of them, they are in-voted candidates, which are, let's say, lawmakers, future lawmakers, based on the parliamentary system they are in. So therefore, many times just a moment, darling. Many times the citizens are simply entrapped within their republic or within their states, because they are represented outside within their governments by those candidates, and as well in customary law regimes and the customary law system. It's highly difficult to promote the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights or the human rights as such, because they are simply not that significantly beneficial to them as their own original customary law regimes and the customary laws within their own tribes, or they are not providing that enough level or the depth of protection as they already have. So the human rights are absolutely undeniably wonderful for each of us on planet Earth and beyond, as is part of the international law system as a supreme law. But therefore, we have to find a way how it really suits with dignity to one and each of us, because some of the tribes or some of the citizens or the vulnerable groups are thinking beyond their own protection, that this might not work for me better than what I already have. So they are exposing to be even more vulnerable, or perhaps they just naturally protecting themselves not to be exploited based on for example, wrong marketing or wrong interpretation, ambiguity, criminality, and so on, many factors. So yes, I suppose it's incredibly difficult to collaborate, as Marisa had mentioned, in this particular governmental body representation, because of the different legal system and the comparative legal systems we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Erika. That was quite insightful input, and I completely agree with you. That's why we have these global meetings every year, in order to provide inputs from people that wouldn't be normally heard via government representations. So thank you all for this quite interesting session. A lot of the questions were very difficult. I understand this, difficult to respond to. We're now going to break for a 5 minutes break in between the objectives. Thank you all for your inputs. Please remain with us after the break, when we will continue with the next objective of today's day. Thank you all. It was incredible. See you in 5 minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. We will now resume the 5th annual Metaverse Safety Week Global Edition of our Global Community Lab session. Focused on human rights and innovation, finding the balance in an open metaverse. I'm Kavya Perlman, and I'll be your moderator for this segment. It includes 10 minutes remarks from a very good friend and absolute expert on the subject, Kathy Bisbee, followed by a set of presentations from our distinguished community members who've prepared 5 minutes remarks to shed the light on exploring technology's democratic potential. You're encouraged to raise your hands and add your own remarks on exploring this technology's democratic potential at the end, and time permitting. And please use the function of raising hands as you feel necessary. So let me now review the focus of this thematic discussion, where we'll hear from various community members. Investigate the potential of open source systems to democratize immersive technology access, enhance social capabilities, and promote justice. Discuss how these systems can be leveraged to support widespread technological empowerment and equity. So for that, to set the context for this global community open discussion session, please welcome Kathy Bisbee. Kathy, Miss Bisbee, is a strange to read, but Kathy currently serves as the director of the Alliance for Digital Equity, a grassroots facilitative leadership model digital equity coalition serving 70+ organizations in 4 counties of Western Massachusetts, housed in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Bay State Health. Previously, she served as the executive director of Brookline Interactive Group BIG, a community media arts center in Brookline, Massachusetts, and was the founding director of Public VR Lab, the very first public interest, publicly accessible XR emerging media lab in the US. She is a documentary and immersive filmmaker, producing international films and co-produced customized VR contents for the United Nations Environment Assembly in Nairobi, Kenya, and continues to be a global advocate for democratizing public access to XR and other forms of media, internet, and technology for all. An alumni for research fellow at MIT Open Doc Lab, Kathy's fieldwork on inclusion and equity in media was featured in Miss Magazine. She was the 5th ever recipient of 2019 Next 10th Legacy Prize from the Virtual World Society. I still remember that's where I first met Kathy and her mom. And she's been a longtime member of our CyberXR coalition from XRSI and, of course, XRSI Global Advisory. Miss Wispy resides in Massachusetts, and her family, where she is using natural horsemanship methods to train her 6-year-old Mustang. I've seen the pictures, they're really amazing. And this is a rescued mare Paprika who teaches her to be deeper listener, more consistent leader, and stronger advocate for affordable healthcare for all. So Kathy, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Kavya. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long. I am dealing with upper respiratory issue today, so please bear with my voice being rather bluesy today. I do have a PowerPoint. I don't know, Kavya, if you're going to share that or if you want me to share that. But while I'm here to talk about democratizing participation, and that has been the basis of my work, at the core of that is access and accessibility. Who benefits from new technologies, who benefits from current technologies, and who is at the table and who is not at the table and who is not participating and who does not have access is really at the core of all of my work, my whole life. And I think one of the things that I want to point out is that democracy requires participation. If you don't have the basis for civic participation, which is now online and using online tools, you cannot participate in a democracy. So my focus really is on how do we improve access to online and digital technologies so that we can have more active participation by everyone, because we're not getting everyone. So Kavya, should I share my screen or?
Yeah, please feel free. Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the other thing that is really central to the work that we've been doing. So the Alliance, as Kavya mentioned, is 100, or we're now 100 organizations across all 4 counties of Western Mass, which is a rather small area, but large in population, very, very rural and very, very urban. We have zip codes in Springfield, Massachusetts, that are the worst communities, the most blighted, the most marginalized, generationally marginalized communities in our state. And we are dealing with a real crisis on a number of levels. So we see, I'm just going to talk a little bit about digital equity before we talk more about some ideas I have around collaboration, which was brought up in the last section, radical collaboration, which I loved hearing. We are a collective of 100 organizations across Western Mass, starting small, working at the local level, being able to use facilitative leadership. We work with the Interaction Institute for Social Change on that. I'm happy to drop that in the chat later, to make sure that every member of our collective is participating in that collective and has a voice in that collective. So I'm sure most of you already know what digital equity is. This is the graphic that we most frequently use to explain it to people. You would be surprised at the level of understanding that policymakers, and Kavya and I have talked to some of them about metaverse safety, but as recently as this year, I've been talking to them a lot about affordability. Congress in the US cut about $3 million subsidies to low-income and most vulnerable populations across the country by cutting a subsidy for affordable internet. So we are still dealing with the digital divide very, very clearly in the United States and in many, many parts of the world. So when we're talking about collaboration, when we're talking about democracy, when we're talking about participation, who's participating? Who isn't participating? And we really have to be mindful of that and be thinking about what are ways and mechanisms and tools and approaches to bring folks who aren't usually at the table to that conversation. Some of you might be familiar with a term called redlining, and you can see on this map below, there are red lines. This was something that was systematically done in the United States many years ago and still happens on the digital level, which is discrimination by housing and realtors and banks based on who they wanted to give housing to based on the neighborhood. So, Blacks and Latino families were moved to the outskirts of the city when white populations wanted to be living in the city. And then the opposite was true when they were moving to the suburbs. We're still dealing with that on a digital basis. So there's still digital redlining. Why does digital equity matter? I know you know this, but these are just some cities in our state. And you can see that these are just 3 years old. These are recent numbers in terms of who has access to the internet, who has access to broadband speeds. You can't use immersive technologies unless you have broadband. You cannot even watch videos sometimes unless you have high enough internet. Myself, I'm in a low-income community. I lose internet connectivity all the time, and I'm paying for the highest tier of service. And I still do not have reliable, affordable internet. These are communities in our state who don't have a laptop or a desktop computer. I would imagine that these percentages, these high percentages, are a surprise, especially to folks outside of the United States, but even inside of the United States. I hear all the time from policymakers, everyone has a phone. You can just get on the internet. Everyone has access to technology. It's absolutely systematically a myth. And as we're creating new ways to approach technology, new emerging and immersive technologies, we have to think about the impact on all of us, not just those of us who have had the benefit of being in a university where we have access to these kinds of tools, but everyone. So one point I want to make is we have really prioritized the role of digital navigators. And some of you may be familiar with community healthcare workers across the country, and I think in other parts of the world as well. It's a wraparound service that helps folks when they come in to a community healthcare clinic to understand what the options are, what their options are, understand, really assess. It's an intake process to understand where they're at. Digital navigators are folks who are very similar to the role of community health workers who are providing wraparound social services around technical support and entry to the digital world. They're also folks who have a high amount of trust in these populations. And they are able to increase transparency because they're being very public and very open, to everyone who needs these services. So some of the things that I'm going to suggest in terms of how do we increase participation in democracy, and increase digital equity in the metaverse and beyond. I think that we need to encourage healthcare and other sectors who need clients, who have a built-in reason to have clients using online tools, and get them to see digital equity as what we call a super social determinant of health and or vital to their commercial interests. We need to challenge our own assumptions about who really benefits and who has access in every part of the work that we're doing, in our design, in our distribution, in our accessibility planning. We have to think about equity in the metaverse, not just as a DEI issue. That is very, very important. Culture, diversity, equity, inclusion is very, very important. We also have to think across the board to all of the vulnerable populations and to all populations about accessibility. One of the reasons that I co-founded the Public VR Lab in Boston in 2015 was people didn't have access to this unless they were to VR and XR, unless they were at a university. We wanted to make sure that the general public, people in our community who were unhoused, could come in and use immersive tools and be creative just like anybody could. That still is not the case. adjusting our baseline for public awareness and education. We have to increase our public awareness and education if we want people to be involved in open systems, if we want people to be involved in the solutions. They have to understand what it is they're dealing with, and many of them just don't have any experience at all. So we have to increase our understanding of emerging technologies. We have to understand the risks and the benefits of opting in and opting out. We have to share in the bounty of new technologies. And we have to, I think, work to develop digital navigators in the metaverse, outside of it and within it. And my last bullet here is we need to train librarians and volunteers who aren't technical to understand and use the tools. Librarians, social workers, folks who are public facing every single day, they know exactly how to explain these kinds of tools and new technologies, existing technologies. Many of our libraries in our network are using, showing people how to use AI. They're the first frontline person who is explaining to somebody what AI is, what XR is, and how to use it. And we did many, many events at libraries, and librarians, they're sort of the underground revolutionaries, and we're going to need them. So lastly, and I'm rushing through a little bit because I'm excited to get into this conversation, and I do want to talk a little bit about network building. We're the ones we've been waiting for. We can't rely, we live in a rural community. We can't rely on the federal government, especially not now, to come up with the solutions that we need in our communities. We're the ones we've been waiting for. We've been talking a lot about that, how we are going to survive now and always in dark times. And the best way that we've found to do that is to work as a network. Network weaving is a term that has garnered some research in recent years. How do networks like this one that you guys are all a part of and I'm a part of, how do we work together to not just bring together people, but bring together connections, interconnections in between people in the group? And those ties are sometimes more important than our relationship. So like Kavya and I have a relationship, but what we bring from each of our networks and then internetworking is even more important. And it allows us to do things as a group that we can't do as a disconnected collection of individuals. And then I love this Adrienne Marie Brown quote. I think of movements as intentional worlds, or perhaps more accurately, as worlds designed by and for intentional people. Those who are able to feel the world not as an unfolding accident of random occurrences, but rather as a massive weaving of intention. You can be tossed about, you can follow someone else's pattern, or you can intentionally begin to weave and shape existence. So I'm hoping that this will spark you a little bit to think about some of the things that we might think about or begin to think about in terms of collaboration. Collaboration is so much harder for people. It's so much harder. It's harder to show up in a group and sit and listen. It may not be always interesting. It may not spark your brain. It may be difficult. There may be conflict. And so many of us, think we can maybe get done more things by ourselves. And that's just, it's not true. It's a myth that we've been told for lots of different reasons, as I'm sure you know. So I'm curious to hear, what would participation really look like if we got folks who are not those of us who have academic backgrounds, are not those of us who have lots of experience with these kinds of tools. I love the International Internet Day. I love the 76 years of human rights today, because I think it's so important that we celebrate these victories, especially when things seem glim, and that we turn towards each other and think about how are we going to organize to make the kind of world possible that we know could happen. So I think I've gone over my 10 minutes and I'm going to stop there because I have lots of other things to say, but thank you again so much for having me, and I'll stay on as long as I can.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you especially for making time while you're not feeling 100% and several other challenges that you're battling with. So I really, really appreciate it. Everyone loves what you mentioned. We are the ones we've been waiting for. I think I just needed a catchphrase for, the whole XRSI mission. This is it. So thank you again. And now I would like to invite our distinguished community members. We have a set of them sort of curated, coordinated. However, you are obviously welcome to raise hand, and I've seen a couple of community members in the background have said that they would like to speak, and we try to make space for them. But let me first pass on the mic to Nakshatra Suresh. This is so great to have you back, Nakshatra. Nakshatra is the co-founder of eIris. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Nakshatra is a cyber criminologist, academic, and digital safety speaker. She's also the co-founder of tech consultancy eIris. eIris works with early stage startups, universities, businesses, organizations to help deploy their products, services, and technologies using safety by design principles, intersectional thought, ideating, and human-centered design. eIris also provides education, training, and consulting services on ethics, professional responsibilities, cyber abuse, digital harassment, creating safer communities in workplace. Nakshatra also currently teaches with the Faculty of Law and Justice at the University of New South Wales. She's been a finalist for numerous awards, including 2024 Women's Agenda Leadership Awards, Emerging Leader in Tech, the Australian South Asian Centre, Stellar South Asian Women's Awards, Global Impact, and Female Factor, a voice of a new era of leaders. Nakshatra, please take it away.
Thank you, Kavya. And I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm joining in from Australia. It's very early here. Happy International Human Rights Day, everyone. I'm dialing in from Darugland in Sydney here. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I join you all today as well. I'm just going to pull up my presentation really quickly, and hopefully we can go from there. Hopefully everyone can see that. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see that? Brilliant. So today I'll be talking about impact and innovation, finding the balance in the metaverse. A lot of the comments that I will make today are very, very similar and stemming off the other insights that have been provided by previous speakers. A little bit of context in addition to the wonderful introduction from Kavya. I am an entrepreneur, an academic, a cyber criminologist, and a digital safety advocate. So I sit amongst a number of different industries. So I do resonate very deeply with a lot of the comments that have been made today, and definitely agree with a lot of them. I'm just going to provide a little bit of extra insight based on the topic that we're discussing today. So when I was thinking about today's track, this is the main question that came into my head, which was, how do you embed democratic principles in the creation and the use of technology without increasing the harm to users? So as part of my role, I talk to a number of founders, and increasingly a lot of them do play around in the metaverse. A lot of them don't realize how their business models actually do not uphold fundamental human rights. But there are different ways of thinking that you need to encourage when you are creating within the metaverse, or innovation more broadly in general, because there will always inherently be harm to someone in the technologies that you use, but you shouldn't increase it through the innovation that you are trying to produce. So here are some considerations for stakeholders, whether you are a founder or you're an academic or you're an advocate in this space. Like I said, stemming from my own personal experience, but a lot of these have been covered today. Actively including members of marginalized groups, especially those who are non-digital natives in feedback cycles for emerging technologies, are really, really important. It is highly encouraged that you don't just begin at this process at the start. It is an ongoing process at every stage in which you deploy a certain feature, or at any stage that you are encouraging more of a profit based on your business model. Please include members of marginalized groups, especially given that you are trying to expand and scale and create more money for your business. It should not come at the cost of increasing harm for those who don't know how to interact with your technology. And on that note, placing particular emphasis and focus on digital literacy. So explaining both individual and collective rights to accessibility, privacy, expression, integrity, fairness, and safety in the metaverse to describe the impacts to users of all backgrounds throughout the process. Like I mentioned, this is what we call ongoing informed consent, that they can revoke this consent at any point as well, and you will have to respect that. I also highly encourage that we use words and definitions that are easy to understand and accessible for all populations. The second we start using complicated jargon, people often just revert to the fact that we are the experts and we are able to make the best decisions for them, when that should not be the case. Every user that interacts with the metaverse or any type of emerging technology needs to understand their own individual rights and to be able to make that decision for themselves. And this is my bread and butter here, which is considering harms from beyond cybersecurity vulnerabilities. We always think about hacking into the system, etc., but let's think about how a user can accidentally or purposely harm another user. They might not intend to, but there might be something in the openness of the system that creates loopholes, whether you're a malicious threat actor or you're just a user and someone who interacts in the metaverse. Stuff like sexual harassment, cyber stalking, and image-based sexual abuse is something that's not currently governed by legislation. And this is a question that I'd like to posit again on this day. How do we criminalize behaviors and not upholding fundamental human rights? Because these will take forever to be legally recognized as crimes. Because the internet has no jurisdiction, how do we govern that from a broader perspective? But how do we play our part as stakeholders to encourage the lack of harmful behaviors in the system? I'd just like to end on this. To all stakeholders, please place your humans at the center of the technology. As we increasingly, that should be rely on, and in virtual worlds, we tend to forget that there is always a human interacting with the technology at the end. The metaverse has shown its incredible potential to reach every digital citizen, but needs safety embedded throughout the innovation process to ensure harm reduction in open systems. And feel free to connect with us using our website. We do have a LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and we'd love to be in touch with anyone who'd like to learn a little bit more about harm reduction in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Nakshatra, for that insightful presentation, remarks, and absolutely, this is the crux of collecting all these global leaders, is so we can interconnect and connect with each other. So please feel free to reach out to each other as well. Next up, and I'm going to try to be as fast as possible because we're kind of running over time, but let me bring in Dylan Fox, Director of Operations of XR Access. Dylan Fox is a researcher. XR Access is a research initiative of Cornell Tech. And Dylan is an expert on accessibility for emerging technologies. He advises groups such as Meta, the W3C, and FCC on how virtual and augmented reality can be more inclusive. He chairs the annual XR Access Symposium, co-founded the Accessibility in the Metaverse Working Group of the Metaverse Standard Forum, and is responsible for many ongoing initiatives to connect disability advocates, technologists, academics, and other key stakeholders to solve difficult problems in accessibility. Fox is also a former researcher and master's graduate at the University of California, Berkeley, where he worked on ways to leverage augmented reality technology for people with low vision, has led a UX design on entertainment application used by millions of people. And Fox's work is at the forefront of making virtual and augmented reality accessible for people who have disabilities. As far as I'm concerned, I obviously reach out to him anytime there is any kind of accessibility aspects that we need to think of or take care of. So Fox, thank you. Dylan, thank you for taking part, and stage is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kavya. I'm starting a 5-minute timer here to keep myself honest, because otherwise I'll just ramble on. But I think what I really wanted to highlight for everybody today, since our focus is on kind of democratic potential, is the opportunity for XR and for the metaverse to really be a boon for disabled folks to meet socially, avoid isolation, and from there kind of be part of the greater democratic process. So as I think Marissa said earlier, or sorry, Kathy, uh, every technology has the potential for widening or bridging the digital divide. And XR is definitely no exception to that. I think we've seen a couple of communities come up in kind of 3D spaces, in XR spaces, of folks, primarily disabled folks. We've seen virtual ability in Second Life, which is a huge community of folks with disabilities. Spoonie VR in the XR space, groups like the VR chat deaf community. There's a huge group of signers in VR. Even there's a documentary called We Met in VR that speaks to that. Um, a ton of people who may not be able to find community locally, may not be able to leave their homes because of their disabilities. But XR and the metaverse offers an opportunity for those people to come together. Now, the catch is right now, XR is not accessible for a lot of people, particularly for people who are blind or have very low vision. A lot of people who are, have severe motor disabilities. Just we need to have out of the box accessibility on these platforms in order to make sure that these technologies are really bridging that digital divide, bridging those gaps, and not just creating yet another platform where other people can kind of continue to get closer together and exchange these exchange ideas and everything, but folks with disabilities get left behind. So that's a big part of what we do at XR Access, obviously. Obviously, it's a part of what the XRSI does, which we're always eternally grateful. I think some of the things I wanted to focus on today, again with this focus democracy, is some of the great work that's been done by groups like Educators in VR, certain places like the USC VR journalism, journalism, I think they do it, where they have put together, they did a work like it was More Than a Survivor, a partnership with the East LA Women's Center, produce stories about the lives of domestic abuse survivors. They put together some of these fabulous experiences that can really help people understand important things about the world, right? We talk about VR as a tool for educating and as a tool for motivating. And I think those are two things that are vitally important when it comes to the democratic process. I would really love to see a virtual world where people could come in, be able to actually operate it in it effectively, no matter their abilities, first of all, but then be able to converse with another, to experience these journalistic pieces and other people's lived experiences in order to help understand what are ultimately the effects of policy, what is the effects of the way we vote, and to have a space in the metaverse for people to communicate with each other, and not just about digital having fun in a fantasy universe, but to bring it back to the way our choices in our democracy really affect ourselves and the lives that we have in our real communities. There's a lot of steps forward in terms of making that happen. Obviously, improving out of the box accessibility, creating powerful social tools that can enable communities and individuals to protect themselves from harassment, and making sure that our metaverses are flexible enough that people can join with whatever devices and whatever level of network connection they have. But even beyond that, but once the tech itself is accessible, we need to convince these diverse communities to utilize it and participate in democracy, right? Some of the ideas we said before about building digital literacy, working with librarians is a fantastic step. But otherwise, talking to all these different stakeholders, which include not just kind of, folks with disabilities, but teachers, purchasers, making sure that people that are controlling access to this prioritize things that are like accessibility. One of the things that we're doing at XR Access for that is, as we said, the Metaverse Standards Forum accessibility working group. We're trying to create a set of standards on par with the W3C's web content accessibility guidelines, so that purchasers for groups like schools, groups like hospitals, can be confident that the XR experiences that they're buying, that they're funding, won't exclude anyone in their communities and in their organizations. So I think I'll leave it there for now. I'd love to have further conversation about this with the folks here or offline. And if anybody is interested in making their XR experiences more accessible, definitely come talk to us at XR Access. We have our resources page, xraccess.org/resources. We're just today, I think, announcing our 2025 symposium call for proposals. So if anybody has a concept that they'd like to bring to our audience of stakeholders, please reach out, and we'd love to magnify and spotlight as much as we can.
Amazing. Thank you, Dylan, and please feel free to share the link for any kind of resources that you deem that our community would benefit from, or you need them to participate. In the interest of time, I am going to move on to our next community speaker, is Deborah M. Donning, faculty lecturer at UC Berkeley, high school and Siegel Endowed Research Fellow at All Tech is Human. Deb Donning is a faculty lecturer at the UC Berkeley School of Information in the MA Data Science program and the 2024-2026 Siegel Endowed Fellow. Also host of Technically Human podcast, where she talks with major thinkers, writers, industry leaders, technologists about relationship between humans and technologies we create. She's the 2023-2024 Belfer Fellow at the Center of Technology and Society at Anti-Defamation League. She's the lead principal investigator on the Assessing the Future of Ethical Technology Workforce Cal Poly research team funded by NSF. She's a fellow at the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. It is great to have you, Deb. Stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Assuming that everybody can hear me, I'll just go ahead and share my screen. I have a couple of slides just to keep me honest, really, and to try and ensure that I stick to the point of view that I have selected to present. A word about this research, which is that it is the subject of a larger research project investigating the interlinkage between AI and, in particular, large language models and extremism. And if anybody's interested in that project, I'm happy to say more about that and the data that substantiates a lot of the claims that I'm making here. Okay, can everybody still see the slides? Just confirming. Great. Okay. Increasingly, the fate of our democracy is inextricably entangled with digital and computational technologies. And what I aim to do here is really not just understand how we can democratize these technologies, but how these technologies are impacting our democracy. And in our online lives, which are increasingly online, the digital world has become the primary place that we go to for the communal dialogue so essential to our democracy. It's where we argue, it's where we want our society to go to discuss the values that we have and where our society goes to think about and deliberate where we want to build toward in the context of our democracy. However, the architecture of these online spaces, which were once hailed and idealized as new democratic extensions of the physical town square, again, so essential to our democratic process, have instead challenged the stability and the health of our democratic social fabric in many ways. And the popularity of these venues, particularly those venues that allow users to post anonymously using synonyms, has fostered division, polarization, and extremism, pulling apart the fabric of our democracy. This is well documented and the subject of concern for many researchers in this area. Now, recent technologies and technological advancements, particularly in AI, in particular in large language models, have introduced new dimensions to this challenge. And the rise of artificial intelligence, particularly in generative AI, has significantly altered the landscape of this discourse and in terms of content generation. And to that end, our digital environment provides new grounds for considerations between the interplay between democracy and persuasion. Artificial intelligence presents both unprecedented opportunities and also grave challenges to our democratic institutions and to our democratic ideals, with the potential to significantly alter the landscape of online discourse and content creation. And particularly as these tools become more mainstream, they stand to accelerate and transform the possibilities of and the direction of ideas in digital spaces where members of civil society go to gather and to share and to discuss and to debate ideas in the civic tradition of democratic exchange. And so the three key questions that I want to ask here are, first, what are the benefits and the risks of open source development, that is to say, a form of development that has been hailed as a democratic form of technological production in the space of generative AI, which is capable of creating vast amounts of content at a very low cost? The second main question is, how might this technology be deployed in service of political polarization and extremism? And how do we balance out the benefits of open source development in all of its democratic allure alongside the risks with all of the challenges that it may pose to democracy? So commercial and proprietary large language models, such as ChatGPT, which have been developed by OpenAI, are typically created and maintained by private companies and organizations with restricted access to our underlying code and training data. The objections to this on the level of democratic participation in generative AI have been very well noted. But these proprietary large language models also do come with built-in content filters, safety measures designed to mitigate the generation of harms or inappropriate content. They are also more rigorously tested for biases and potential misuse for public release, as is the case with ChatGPT. And while imperfect, these tests result in guardrails or precautionary measures to protect against misuse and harm and bad actors who can manipulate code or potentially remove guardrails, or who, in collaborating together, don't have the means to put up those guardrails in a consistent, measured way to begin with. Now, in contrast, open source large language models have been characterized as providing a means to democratize AI. And they follow in many ways, or the development of open source or open weight large language models follow the principles of inclusion and diversity to lower the barriers to entry for those who wish to engage in the practice of technological production, who want to have their voices registered, who want to intervene into these technological products and their development. And all of this potentially allows a more diverse range of voices to participate in AI development and employment. But they also present significant risks. And here's the paradox. The same openness that makes AI development more democratic in production also creates vulnerabilities that could undermine democracy itself. And what we've discovered is that large language open source models, when exposed to extremist content, and here is the data that we collected on this project, can not only replicate but amplify harmful ideologies online. And even more troublingly, these models demonstrate a remarkable sensitivity to subtle biases in language, which could potentially accelerate the spread of extremist viewpoints and end up excluding the very people that open source language models ideologically wants to include, therefore eroding that democratic fabric, and in addition to that, the shared foundation of facts and discourse that democracy depends upon. So I'll
just
close.
real quick.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt now, but your slides were not transitioning in case.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Thank you for letting me know.
I'm so sorry.
Can you see this one?
It's kind of stuck on the first one. So.
Oh, okay. How's that? Still not going? Still not going?
Yeah, it's just stuck on the first slide.
How's that?
So sorry.
I think
yeah. Now we see it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's okay. The slides aren't that important, and I'm happy to share them afterward. But I just want to end with this. The stakes could not be higher. Our research shows that without careful consideration and appropriate guardrails, AI systems could accelerate the erosion of democratic discourse and amplify extremist viewpoints. Yet, with, I think, thoughtful development and proper safeguards, these same technologies could strengthen democratic participation and protect human rights. And this choice, it is a responsibility, belongs to all of us, particularly this group who is informed about and measured about what democratic participation in technological production looks like, and also aware of the ways in which our technologies are also impacting and challenging our ability to talk to one another online in ways that democratic discourse requires us to be able to do. And the choice, the responsibility, it belongs to all of us because this is a democracy itself. Our success in navigating this challenge, in my view, will determine whether AI becomes a force for democratic empowerment or a tool for its erosion. So I will take any questions again, the data that I have here, which looked at the website Stormfront and tried to use open source language models to see what would happen if a bad actor wanted to erode that, plug in that data, and to elevate extremist content online, or to tailor that kind of content for people who are in the place to be moved toward extremism. Again, happy to share that data, and thanks all for the considered opportunity to discuss technology and our lives online at the intersection of democracy.
Thank you, Deb. And I encourage everyone to take note of Deb's email address, and please feel free to reach out, as this is a very important aspect of the research that Deb has shared. Thank you so much. And again, in the interest of time, I'd be moving on to Marissa Zalabak. I should say this correctly. Marissa Zalabak.
Zalabak. Yeah, it's just phonetic. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Kavya.
Thank you. Founder of Open Channel Culture, Marissa is a TEDx and keynote speaker, author, educational psychologist, equity advisor, AI ethicist, and climate sustainability leader. Specialist across sectors in adaptive leadership, transdisciplinary collaboration, AI ethics, social, emotional, creative intelligences, conflict resolution, social justice, climate repair and sustainability, and organizational culture and change. As a co-chair of committee dedicated to expanding AI ethics education, and as a contributing author of IEEE.org recommendations for ethical standards in AI and intelligent system design. I believe we have extraordinary possibilities and working in partnership with intelligent technologies. And so, without wasting further time, and because there's a long, lengthy list of Marissa does, and I'm going to just hand this over to Marissa to contribute her remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kavya, and thank you. I'm just going to play the slides, making sure everybody can see it. Oh, have you got them? Can you see them?
It still says loading.
Oh. You seeing them or not seeing them?
At least not at my end. Anyone else? Perhaps try to unshare and share again. Might work.
Okay, and I'll try again.
You've started sharing the screen, but unfortunately, it's not showing.
Let's see where it is. Is it showing now?
I see your screen for sure, and it says click to exit full screen. If you go to that tab, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go out, and I'll have to just come back again.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. In the meantime,
I'm just gonna go ahead and start, because there's, I think there's, no, I don't want to be taking the time to do that. No, it's still not doing it. Oh, it's okay. So I'm just because I know of time. I really just want to make sure that we use the time.
Yes.
So the first thing I would like. Oh no, I've lost my. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to come because I've lost this.
Totally fine, Marissa. And in the meantime, allow me to bring in another speaker from our community, and then we can absolutely, we'd love to have you back.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're figuring out Marissa's technical challenges, why don't I welcome another distinguished community member, Jason Robinson. Jason, are you amongst us? And since this remark request comes in later, I don't have your detailed bio here. Would you be kind to introduce yourself?
Of course. Are you able to hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
Good. Wonderful. And I'm going to share my screen and let me know whether you can see my title slide as well.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm calling today from Brazil. I'm a master's student. I'm from industry. I'm a user experience and product designer with a background in the games industry and in higher education. And so I come at everything from a UX design perspective. I read a quote in 2018 that kind of stuck with me and haunted me. Devices intended to augment life, not replace it, have always been more compelling. Every moment one is awake is worth addressing. This was in the middle of a conversation about VR versus AR or mixed reality. And I really became captivated by AR. I ended up getting my master's in public interest technology with a specific focus on digital hospitality, how we create spaces that are caring for our guests, and specifically augmented reality, and even more specifically, augmented reality for public spaces. I remember reading a lot of magazines like this when I was a youth. VR, just around the corner, right? And this was in 1995. So sometimes things take a little while longer than we think, but they're really happening. Even just a couple of years ago when I was writing my research paper, AR and mixed reality were really just advertised for and built for industry, specialized places like medicine and industry. But really, even just in the last 2 years, we've started to see examples specifically marketed to and shipped to consumers of products that are things you might even wear on the street, but they don't do all that much quite yet, or things that do a lot, but you probably wouldn't bring them to the coffee shop with you. And prototypes of ideas about things that aren't available for consumers, but might be someday that you might actually wear and that might do a lot. But we're figuring all this out, right? Thinking ahead about what comes next. Technologies and specifically user interface changes tend to bring about societal and socio-technical change. So, the PC in the living room meant that you could go to a place in your home to compute without having to find a mainframe somewhere. Laptops allowed us to take that public and go to other places, but you still kind of had to plan ahead and find a charger and later find Wi-Fi. When the smartphone came around, suddenly could not just compute in a public way, but in a persistent way. You knew that you always had access to technology with you, but was not broadly spread. Over time, it became prevalent. This was more marketing innovation than technological, but commoditization of prices and different sales models to make sure that many, many people could have access to phones and to internet. Still not everywhere, but more prevalent. And the promise of AR is this passive situation. This is Google Glass. Maybe that was a little ahead of its time, but a passive idea that you can just leave your house in the morning and have computing mingled with whatever you're doing at any time. As a public interest technologist, that's both very interesting and also terrifying. So I'm really grateful for reports like this from the IEEE about Metaverse and its governance, and all of you who are thinking and doing really hard work to figure out how we take care of humans in the middle of all of this. There's a whole stack of governance that you might consider. And I was really kind of, what we're seeing right now is device makers, operating system makers, Apple, for example, and Meta, thinking about how they're going to make their devices, which is going to affect what the consumer AR or MR experience is. I'm focused a lot on, as a designer, what are these experiences like that we're going to create? All of this is going to affect users, and kind of uniquely to public consumer AR bystanders as well, the people in the world around us. So this is a public interest technology framework, thinking through inclusion, reflexivity, anticipation, wrestling with all those through a responsive lens to produce robust and accountable and ready a readiness for what comes, and then finding ways to tie those together and have alignment between the technology and the business and the humans in the middle of all of it. So my work focuses a lot on who do we care for and how do we do that. A lot of other devices care for the person using them, the body, but this gets into the mind as well. You start thinking about emotional bleed, perception, agency, identity, privacy, all the things we'll be hearing about a lot this week. But we also have to care for the bystander, their awareness of what you are doing, their consent, your connection to them. Are you alienating yourself from them? And then finally, care for reality. What does it mean to have a set of principles that allow you to uplift humans, prioritize what's real and human, and allow technology to augment or to enhance our experience, but not sort of replace it? Gather data. It's necessary to gather data if you're doing AR, but how do you do that in a way that doesn't gather data you don't need, or keep it longer than you need, or interpret it in ways you don't need to do? And then finally, really giving meaningful and powerful controls to the person who's having these experiences. So I'm looking forward to the future of all the things that are coming, and really excited to see this week some of what you all are thinking about that help influence this. That is all.
Thank you, Jason. And that's very kind of you to share your experiences, as well as, bring about this quick perspective that, really sheds light on how we are still in a sort of a waiting game for the metaverse to arrive, but the challenge is already here. And let me just quickly check in with Marissa. Marissa, do you want to give it a shot again?
Yep. I think I'm ready to go. Hold on one second. Are you seeing it?
Yes, we are.
Okay, spectacular. I'm going to play slideshow.
That's it. I want to make sure that your slides are transitioning.
Got it?
Yes, I think we have.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. Technology only helps when it does. So what I'd like to do is talk, I'm going to just jump in right away because just of time. Democratizing increased access. And to me, that is integral to mental health supports through metaverse tools. That when we're really talking about these safeties, and there's been a lot of discussion right now, and I really appreciate Jason mentioned this, Dylan mentioned this, most people have on the psychological consequences and the psychological aspects. And one of the issues that we're dealing with a lot is the fact that there are not as many, I've been now doing this for about 10 years, there's not as many mental health professionals, practicing psychologists, sometimes researchers, which is great, but people really, as Kathleen was talking about, or as Kathy was talking about it, people who are actually on the ground, people working with people. So mental health supports in the universe. And I want to actually going back to this in terms of increased access for people with disabilities. Dylan, I was really appreciating your work and your presentation. I work with very extreme neurodivergent populations and people with extreme disabilities or differently abled. And this is something that we really hope to get more access. The big issue is what Kathy and other people have talked about is we do not have the access. In New York City, more than 30% of the schools and neighborhoods do not have adequate internet access, let alone hardware to actually even get into these things. So that's something to work on. Mental health supports in the metaverse. So the potential, I'm going to start with risks and then go to the benefits, right? So the risks, it's the labeling of supports. Very often what is either triage or reinforcement for someone is actually presented as treatment. And this is really a dangerous thing when we have a machine delivering what is considered treatment. And this is really where we need to go back to what Melodina was talking about of having humans in the loop. It can be a yes and, but the either or is really important. Now, how are we labeling these supports and who are they seeing? Design standards. We need design standards with practicing psychologists and mental health professionals. I'm currently working with IEEE on this is the second standard for emulated empathy in AI and simulated emotions. And I'm one of the few psychologists. This is where it's great to have we have our technicians, but we really need to be bringing people in who are in the field working with people on a daily basis. the anthropomorphizing, right? This idea of we are that's what humans do. We want to make machines like humans. We want to have them represent human beings, but in fact, that does have a potential for delusional states and manipulation. And that was, again, what has been talked about before. Melodina mentioned it, several others. This is chatbot suicides that are enabled with synthetic emotion, and because people begin to lose sense of who they are and who they're speaking with. This is not just children, by the way. There's also a huge amount of elders and people in cognitive vulnerable positions who are also greatly at risk. Tech addiction. Tech addiction is a very real thing. Young people currently spend more than 10, on average, 10 hours a day, 10 hours of their waking time. So if you consider that leaves, if they are sleeping 6 hours, that leaves 6 hours a day for young people to actually be engaging with other human beings. And that tech addiction begins to take the place of connecting with another human being. This is exacerbated by the loneliness epidemic. And whether it's chicken or the egg, cause and effect, both of those things exist. And one of the quotes I really loved recently was, are we in fact curing loneliness while we're scaling isolation? Because if in fact we're scaling these places for people to be ultimately by themselves in a place with maybe it's a person, maybe it's not a person. Are we in fact scaling isolation when we think we're curing loneliness? These are questions that I think that are important for us to ask. And privacy and manipulation of vulnerable populations, which has been mentioned many, many times. Now I want to go to the potential benefits, because I think both of these things exist. Relaxation, right? A relaxation environment in an AR, VR world is a beautiful thing. If it is accessible, that's a lovely thing if that's very carefully designed with privacy in mind. Facilitation in the creation of supportive communities for marginalized groups, people who aren't able to communicate with others. We saw a huge amount of desire for this that grew during the COVID epidemic. We see it during other emergencies and other emergency states. But how are those being facilitated? Is there a human in the loop facilitating, or is it in fact a surveillance? Is there a surveillance system? So we want to make sure that the facilitation of that is being done carefully. And virtual reality assisted therapy tools, right? That these are, again, we can be using them for triage or reinforcement. But when we are using them in the place of having therapeutic care by a human being or human being in tandem, right? Both of those things can happen. If we can use those in tandem, now we have not lost all sense of connection to another human being. Psychologically, we have a need to co-regulate. That's actually a reality. That's why isolation, putting a person an incarcerated person in isolation is such a horrible thing. So we all have a desire to co-regulate with another person. If it only ends up being a machine, it really does disrupt the entire nervous system, and it has effects on the brain. There are many studies on this that I'm happy to share those. Social concerns, right? So the biggest to me, this goes back to something Kathy was talking about, other people were talking about. There is a potential in these places, if these communities are not facilitated, or if they're facilitated in ways that exacerbate an agreement, right? So, the Exanon, right? The groups of radicals, as Deb was talking about, we can actually foment social discord if what we're doing in those communities is actually fostering that. So how are we using those communities? Can we begin to build some kind of friendly oversight with? It's a hard one. Is it surveillance or is it friendly facilitation? The social concern, cost of hardware, the cost of this stuff. There are so many people, we've been talking about inclusivity, but that's an entry-level barrier. If I don't have the equipment, I don't get in. And the infrastructure, and that is cost of hardware, not just for students and young people, this is also in the infrastructure and the hardware. This exists in libraries, which Katie mentioned before. Libraries do not have the systems. Educators, I've worked in over 500 schools in New York City. Educators in New York City do not have the kind of infrastructure and or training to be able to even understand how to use it themselves, let alone teach with it. The students as well. And then there's, of course, what we want to really be addressing is in the design, development, deployment, where are biases built in there? Because we're human beings programming it. And how our socioeconomic status, how is that taken into consideration? And then, of course, cultural issues. And that comes to the radical collaboration. So I'm going to wrap up with actions to me. The idea is, to me, it's top first and foremost, and I am a fortunate person to be a co-founder with Monica, who is one of the leaders of this, as well as Nailushu, who's here, and several others on GAIDS. What we've been working on is education for awareness, education for skills, education that is aligned with all of the things we've been talking about, but it's a very complex, many-layered level of education that can be done simply. It does not need to be done in complex language. Practicing psychologists and mental health professionals is really essential. Embedding human rights in the design, development, and deployment, and Deb talked about that before. This is an iterative process. It can't happen once. It has to be happening over and over and over again, because we're going to make mistakes, right? We're going to miss things. So how do we do that? That the one thing that we haven't, oh, I'm sorry, misspelled well-being. I transferred the words, the letters. What is the technology we're using? What is the impact it's having on energy, on carbon emissions, on water? And we haven't been mentioning those. Those are really vitally important, because that is also going to affect human well-being, planetary well-being, our ability to flourish. Are we actually damaging the planet with this extraordinary technology? And then ultimately, all of it comes down to me to radical collaboration, which is radically inclusive. And that takes a different kind of facilitation. It's something I've been working on for many years. I'm not the only person. There are many people who have been. And I look forward to being in a community like this and communities like this, where, you know, we are the ones we've been waiting for, right? How do we become radically collaborative ourselves in a way that then models that, and not only models it, invites others to come in, because they're going to do it in different ways. There are people right now in many countries who say, I don't want this to be around me, because we're seeing the effects psychosocially. And so how are we including them in the conversation, so that we see something that we can, in fact, truly democratize, and or maybe democracy is not the term for it. I'm not sure. It might be a new term that we're looking at. And I'm just going to end there. I'll escape from there and stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marissa. That was extremely profound and very important to continue the discourse on these topics. Please connect with Marissa on LinkedIn. Let's continue the conversation even offline. I need to introduce the next speaker, Julie Ovono. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your surname. So Julie is an executive director of Internet Sans Frontiers and the founder of the Content Policy and Society Lab, an organization first incubated at Stanford University that helps tech be better for society. Julie is one of the inaugural members of the Meta Oversight Board that oversees content moderation decisions on Facebook and Instagram. She's also a researcher affiliated with the Burkham Quine Center at Harvard University at the intersection of business and human rights. Julie is passionate about creating spaces for cooperation between tech companies, civil society organizations, academic institutions, governments, and finding creative solutions to major governance and policy challenges posed by technology. She serves as on the board of the Community to Protect Journalists, Witness, Medan, and the Dangerous Speech Project. She was one of the UNESCO's ad hoc expert group who drafted the first ever global standards on ethics of artificial intelligence. Julie graduated international law from La Sorbonne University in Paris and practices as he's practiced as lawyer at the Paris bar. Thank you, Julie, for being with us. Please share your remarks if you're able to.
Thank you so much, Mocha, and you did pretty well. Of course, thanks our side for the invitation. I absolutely wanted to be here today, despite, as you can probably see, other obligations that forced me not to be able to. I mean, I was not able to stay the whole conversation, but what I heard intersects very well with what I'm going to talk about, which is the lack of dichotomy between innovation and human rights, and probably have a continue to push for this discourse around the fact that it's important. Innovation and human rights go hand in hand and are good for business, are good for society. As it was said, I'm leading a nonprofit organization called Internet Sans Frontières, which has worked with many stakeholders as part of this important mission of making sure freedom of expression and other human rights are not adversely affected on connected spaces. And obviously the metaverse is becoming and is going to be another space where human rights could be negatively impacted if we did not do anything. Hence the importance of stakeholder collaboration, multi-stakeholder collaboration. This is at the core of what we advocate for, making sure that civil society organizations, technology companies, governments, and academia can all sit at a table and agree on standards, frameworks, regulation, because of course we have to talk about that as well, and other forms of ways to oversee the technology and make sure that it doesn't adversely affect human rights. This type of multi-stakeholder collaborations have brought so many positive developments. I think the very fact that we're talking today about the metaverse, which has been, everybody's wondering. Some people are wondering if it's happening. Of course, we do believe it's happening, but we are preparing even before it becomes a bigger conversation and a more mainstream one. The very fact that we're having this conversation proves that multi-stakeholder work has been done in the past when it comes to other internet issues, and bring us today at this in future. That's one aspect that I wanted to make sure to talk about on the International Human Rights Day. The other aspect that I wanted obviously to make sure we can discuss if we have time is of course the question of, okay, we sit at a table, we agree, and then what happens next? Obviously, when there is regulation, there is a government that will oversee the regulation. But when there is no regulation, which is something that I'm not here to make a case for any of each ways. And then that's where the role of organizations and spaces such as this one becomes important, because we can make sure, and I emphatically agree with what was said earlier about we were the ones we were waiting for. And so I'll stop there. I don't want to take too much time because we are way over time, but I wanted to stress the message around multi-stakeholder collaborations, human rights by design, proactive, and of course, last but not least, oversee implementation of what we hear.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Julie. I think the connection was breaking down a little bit and it's not so great, but I thank you so much for joining us even while we were dealing with other things. You're quite impressive, and I can express on my behalf and on behalf of Kavya and everyone on the team that you're quite welcome to join XRSI and be a part of us. And also my other initiatives and communities, I personally invite you to all of them. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, on all the networks, and just let's link up and let's discuss because you're quite brilliant. And I think that can be said for everyone who participated in this insight session. It was quite profound. You touched on a lot of very important points which will find their place in our report as they did last year, as is the tradition with Metaverse Safety Week. Please come join us after the break. We're going to go away now for 10-minute break, which was supposed to be 20 minutes, but we ran a little bit over time. It was important to hear from all of you. So I hope that you agree that we cut the break a little short. 10 minutes break. Please join us again in 10 minutes at 12 noon Pacific time so that we can continue the discussion. And also do not forget that Metaverse Safety Week is 5 days. So all the regulatory points that you're raising, all the points that concern privacy and safety issues, there is a dedicated day for cybersecurity and dedicated day for regulations as well, where you can raise those issues and go further in depth on all of them. And we'll be quite happy to continue the discussions even offline. Let's take a short break and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you all.
Everyone. We'll now resume the 5th annual Metaverse Safety Week edition's Community Lab discussion focused on evolving rights in the digital era. My name is Emmy Hine, and I'll be your moderator for the focus session on the third and last objective for today's Community Lab. We'll start with 10 minutes of remarks by Patrick Grady, followed by a Thinkscape session to gather practical insights on evolving rights for the digital era. Thinkscape's innovative platform helps optimize group insights and amplify collective intelligence through real-time conversations, enhancing the quality of dialogue and decision-making throughout the event. Let's review the focus of this thematic discussion. Formulate evolving rights for the digital era. We'll address how existing rights may change in immersive contexts and the possible need for the development of new rights, tailored to the challenges posed by emerging technologies like AI and data-driven systems. And we'll explore the concept of neurorights and other new frameworks that may be necessary to protect individuals in an increasingly digital world. Now, please welcome Patrick Grady. Patrick founded Metaverse EU, a Brussels-based policy hub fostering knowledge and understanding of the metaverse and its evolving regulatory framework. He also leads the tech practice at Foretold, a public affairs consultancy, works with the World Economic Forum on metaverse governance, and sits on the advisory board of the Children's Online Redress Sandbox. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you very much, Emmy. That's a very kind introduction. Let me just check that my screen is sharing here. You can see slides?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So Emmy's already done my introduction, which is great. At Metaverse EU, you can check out our website. We focus on primarily EU policy as it relates to the metaverse, and there's a surprising amount going on, so please head on over there. For today, though, I'm going to focus on neurorights, because to set up the rest of the session a little bit, what neurotechnologies are, what are some of the new rights that have been posed, and then maybe also some conceptual issues that might come up later as well. But first, why are we talking about neurotechnology at a Metaverse Safety Week? I think we're noticing many of these technologies are starting to be called neurotechnologies because of the way they interact with our brain data. The increasing blend between the real and virtual worlds. I think we will see more and more use of neurotech. And finally, there are some emerging use cases in digital twins, in human twins. I think these technologies will evolve substantially. The more and more we see neurotechnologies rolled out, they'll be able to provide new kinds of data and insights for those twinning technologies. I want to start though with a quote. The amount of independence that I've been given, it's changed my life. This is a quote from Norman Abar, who is famously the first human being who has tried the Neuralink device inside of his head. And as a result, despite the fact that he is paralyzed from the head below, is able to control a computer, which means he's able to play video games, socialize with friends, and reach family. So it's important to remember, why these things are being developed in the first place. What are neurotechnologies? So I quite like the definition from the Center for Future Generations. So the devices that can read from and write to the brain. For us, we typically, I mean, us as in policy and trust and safety and folks in academia, we typically talk about brain-computer interfaces. So they could be direct implants or something or non-invasive, like you have a helmet that has ESG sensors on the outside. We'll be sending data like this to a computer, which can then be used to control everything from bionic arms to hearing devices. But the more technical way of looking at neurotechnologies there are three types. Neuromodulation technologies. So these are technologies that stimulate the nervous system through electric or chemical stimulation. So people that suffer from chronic pain sometimes wear devices that stimulate the nerves in the spine. As Medtronic is a name of a famous supplier of those technologies. Again, these are already on the market. There's also devices now that you can place near the nerves in your neck to prevent epileptic fits from coming about. LivaNova is a company that's working on that. And there are also other devices that you can attach to your body that stimulate the brain for people with Parkinson's to alleviate some of the symptoms. Neuroprosthetics, so these are devices that replace or enhance the function of a part of the nervous system. So one of the most used is cochlear implants. These have implants, invasive implants with a transmitter on the outside, and they stimulate the effect of hearing for people that have lost hearing. There is a similar technology to also stimulate what it's like to see. In these cases, people are not seeing the way that we see them, but they're able to stimulate the experience of blurred imagery in front of them. And that's a company that's working on those. And finally, one of the most promising areas is bionics and the ability to send. Well, the way it works is actually patients will learn to basically control areas of their brain that will then relate to different parts of the bionic arm. It's quite impressive work. So finally, the third category is neurosensing. Sometimes this is called neuroimaging. So these technologies will be more familiar to us. They're technologies that visualize the structure of the brain and nervous system. So EEG, PET scans, fMRIs, medical procedures that we're a bit more familiar with. So now I want to talk a bit about why these technologies why we're talking about neuro rights, basically, the fact that these technologies are seemingly posing new risks. So the risks to mental privacy of patients, risks to their identity, to their agency, and new risks regarding the protection from bias and discrimination. Ergo, some say we need a selection of new rights, which neuro rights, to deal with these new risks. What are neuro rights? I quite like this definition from Professor Woods from University of Graz, Austria. Laws protecting the essential nervous system of individuals from cognitive and emotional manipulation committed with the help of AI. Neuro Rights Initiative is ahead of the game on this, and they put forward some concrete neuro rights, so the right to personal identity, right to free will, right to mental privacy, right to equal access to mental augmentation. Basically, what that means is it's an appeal to equity. So if these in any way can enhance people's lives, then it's important that is spread equitably across populations. The right to protection from algorithmic bias. What I found when reading into neuro rights is that they are also controversial as a concept. As you might have noticed from this list, many of these rights already exist, and there are some that believe that this is a form of rights inflation that devalues fundamental rights that already exist. Some are vague. So what is personal identity? We have concepts for character and personality. Personal identity is even vaguer than those two, or unscientific. So if your right to free will is going to raise many more questions than it could solve. And then on the other hand, some of these are too specific. So the right to protection from algorithmic bias. We worked a lot on the AI Act here in Brussels. And the whole point of the bill was to be as technologically neutral as possible. In many cases, unlike human beings, we're able to debias algorithms, and sometimes the outcomes can be more positive than human bias. So to have a right that targets algorithmic bias fails to acknowledge the source of the issue, according to some critics. Finally, it's like a conceptual misnomer. The proposed rights, they concern neither neurons nor the problems caused only by neurotechnologies. And if it's a conceptual misnomer, then it's an issue for people that are proposing neural rights to begin with. I come from a sort of Metaverse EU, as you might imagine, is EU based. We're based in Brussels, and fortunately, we have a strong framework that exists here. And I think it's important to recognise that's not the case everywhere. But in the EU, we have a Charter of Fundamental Rights that was updated in the year 2000. A couple of years ago, we had the European Declaration on Digital Rights, so try to be relevant for the digital age. We also have a lot of laws that inspired and came off the back of this, like GDPR and its recent updates. And then finally, this year we had the AI Act passed into law that had articles that were quite specific to these concepts. So Article 5 was prohibiting the use of AI that was manipulating people. I think there's a term here, beyond their consciousness. So you can imagine if you're able to manipulate people based upon their brain data, that would fall into this category. This was just an overview, so hopefully it was useful and it will guide the rest of the discussion.
Yes, thank you so very much, Patrick, for tying us back to the very beginning of the session when we discussed neural rights and their connection to the ever-evolving concept of human rights in the current technological landscape. An insightful overview. The session will now be followed by a Thinkscape session where all of your inputs will be joined and amplified by our collective intelligence through real-time conversations. At any given moment, no personal data will be collected beyond the already permitted, and the aggregated output of our exercise will be reflected in our lab report. Please welcome Chris Hornstobel from Anonymous AI, who is going to introduce us to the Thinkscape exercise which we have planned for this global web experience during Human Rights Day. Chris?
Yes, thank you for having us. On behalf of all of you Anonymous AI, we really are incredibly happy to be here today and really happy to participate. I'm going to put a link I just dropped a link into chat. If you click that link, you will join as an anonymous participant onto our Thinkscape AI platform. And when you join Thinkscape AI, you'll join anonymously. You'll see that as you join that we are using we copied our anonymous usernames from the Google standard of using a random color and random animal. So everyone will be joining as pink giraffe or yellow hippo or green walrus or something like that. But please do click and join us. The more people we have online on the Thinkscape platform, the better the discussion we will have. And what we do at Thinkscape is, I'll just provide a little bit of background as people join us, is what Thinkscape is mostly made to do is to facilitate discussions between large groups of people. What we know is that there are a lot of problems with human beings engaging in verbal communication. Those problems can be anything from the loudest voice in a room dominating conversation to just simply the logistics of having 20 people in a meeting space trying to have a meaningful give and take discussion can be very, very difficult. People get frustrated. People feel like they're not being heard. People feel like they don't get a chance to say what they would like to what they'd like to say, essentially, within the allotted time. So it looks like we've got about 8 or 9 people joining in. Let me know if you're having any difficulties joining. but I don't want to wait too long before we get started with some instructions, which I will show in ThinkScape. And ThinkScape, as you will see, is an entirely text-based chat platform. You will see that there is a small microphone towards the bottom of the interface. You can click that to enable speech to text. However, we do ask that if you do that, that you are mindful that you keep your Zoom microphone muted, just so that you can also, just so that we're not hearing you also in in Zoom if you do that. Okay, I do see it looks like we're up to about 10 folks right now. I'm going to start off our session today by showing a very short video on the ThinkScape platform that explains a little bit about how ThinkScape works. And so I see that the screen is being shared in Zoom. Thank you for that. I'm going to show this short video now that there's no sound to it, and it just explains how ThinkScape works.
Thank you very much, Chris. For those of you who didn't have the platform open, the video was played in the platform, the ThinkScape platform.
Yeah,
please click on.
Let's go ahead and proceed now to our questions today. So very shortly, we're going to break everyone into what we call into smaller rooms. We call them think tanks. Basically, think of them as breakout rooms. We do ask that you keep the chat on topic as much as possible. You can make, if the text appears small to you, you will see an accessibility option in the lower right to enlarge the text. It's the 2-letter A's that appears side by side. I'm going to get us set here. And so obviously today's we have 2 questions that we'd like to discuss. We'll have about 7 or 8 minutes to discuss each one. And today's discussion will cover topics related to International Human Rights Day. So let's get started. I'm going to post our first question. If you don't happen to see the moderator post the first question, you'll also be able to see that first question displayed for you at the very top of the interface. And here is our first question. So please discuss in text chat where it says share your thoughts. And I'm going to disable my mic and let's discuss this question in chat. And just in case, I'll repeat the question verbally too. Do we need new human rights for the immersive era, or can we interpret existing ones to provide sufficient protection, and why? And the big thing here for all of our questions today is going to be the word why. We're very interested in the reasoning, thought processes, and ideas that you have.
Thank you, Chris. I'll go into the chat now and explain my reasoning.
And some excellent responses being offered so far. And you can see that now there are AI agents planted that identify themselves and exist in each of the think tanks. And they're just passing thoughts back and forth and summaries back and forth between the two rooms. You can interact with those AI messengers, if you like, that are summarizing responses from other rooms, as well as continuing to interact with people within your own room. And now we're in a phase we call the convergence phase. It's showing the two answers that we're considering for this first question, and also some of the supporting and even some of the rejecting reasons for those two answers. And then once this think timer expires, we'll have another minute or two just to make a final case for the answers that some of you may like, may not like, or just final ideas about these answers? And there you see our answer with some of the reasons provided by some, but not all of the reasons. We do collect all of the reasons, and we do provide all of the reasons in various reports that we generate after a session. But with this in mind, I want to proceed to the second and final question that we have today, and it's going to follow from our first answer. So in our first question, I think by a pretty overwhelming and very strong consensus, we had that let me rephrase that and repost this. In our previous question, the strong consensus was that we may need new human rights for the immersive era. So I want you to keep that in mind, that we previously definitely identified that it may be integral to come up with new human rights for the immersive era. Keep that in mind, and we're going to do a brainstorming exercise here. And that brainstorming exercise will be, what new human rights should we consider for the immersive era and why? What new human rights should we consider for the immersive era and why? And we're going to eventually come up with a list here, but give us your ideas and also tell us why the human rights initiatives or human rights needs that you suggest are so integral for the immersive era. And now you'll see the 10 most supported answers that we've seen so far when considering this question. We're going to slowly narrow these down just to create kind of an ordered list that we can share, but also that will provide us with reasoning for all of the individual ideas suggested today. Okay, that concludes our exercise today. That was a fantastic discussion. Really appreciate everyone taking part in that discussion today.
Thank you, Chris. That was actually an extremely interesting way to conduct an actual discussion that leads to valuable conclusions. And as always, Anonymous AI has been incredible throughout this entire day. Thank you so much for supporting Metaverse Safety Week, Human Rights Day, for our global community web. And I would like to express my most sincere and deep gratitude to each and every one of you who remained with us for the entirety of the day. I would like to express my deep and sincere gratitude to the speakers, to the participants, to the community partners for your invaluable insights, your incredible expertise, those wonderful insight sessions that we received from people from the community. I would like to express my most sincere and profound gratitude to Meta, our lead sponsor, for making this event possible, for supporting Metaverse Safety Week every single year, and making sure that the global discourse continues when it comes down to digital technologies and to immersive technologies. Special gratitude to Chris, Sean, and David Boltax and the Anonymous AI team again for these incredible exercises, which will be featured in our report at the end of this week, after the conclusion of it. Please remember that Metaverse Safety Week is an entire week. Join same time tomorrow for Youth Empowerment Community Web, I believe it is. I would like to say thank you to our speakers, Meudina, Julie, Nakshatra, Diwan Fox, Deb Donick, Jason Robinson, Patrick Grady, Professor Maria who, Professor Maria, who joined us earlier today as our keynote speaker all the way from Chile. I would like to express my most sincere and deep gratitude to Kavya Porman, who organizes these conversations every single year, to the entire team, and to Banjit, who has been the force behind the scenes on everything, and to everyone who provided their intelligence towards the production of a really beautiful and interesting day. Your insights are valued and appreciated. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to my co-chair, Amy Heim, for being with us today. And please feel free to connect with us. Please feel free to connect with XRSI, and let's continue the conversation even offline. The team will make the Slack channel available to you, and we will appreciate all the inputs that you have towards the conclusion of the reports that we'll produce at the end of this week, after the conclusion of Metaverse Safety Week. Thank you all. I hope you had a great day, and join tomorrow for the next day of the Metaverse Safety Week. Thank you.